or is blood kin. I must keep this from him until I know how he will react, until we are away from the blight. If he thought Isam were alive. The Watchers wait on Toman Head, Varen went on. There are a few who still cling to the old belief that the armies Arthur Hawkwing sent across the Arith Ocean will return one day, though after all this time, she gave a disdainful sniff. The Domier Avron, the Watchers over the waves, still have a community is the best word, I suppose, on Toman Head at Falma, and one of the old names for Arthur Hawkwing was Hammer of the Light. Are you suggesting, daughter, the Amerlin seat said, that Arthur Hawkwing's armies, or rather their descendants, might actually return after 1,000 years? There are rumors of war on Almuth Plain and Toman Head, Moiraine said slowly, and Hawkwing sent 2 of his sons as well as armies. If they did survive in whatever lands they found, there could well be many descendants of Hawkwing, or none. The Amerlin gave Moiraine a guarded look, obviously wishing they were alone, so she could demand to know what Moiraine was up to. Moiraine made a soothing gesture, and her old friend grimaced at her. Varen, with her nose still buried in her notes, noticed none of it. I don't know, Mother. I doubt it, though. We know nothing at all of those lands Arthur Hawkwing set out to conquer. It's too bad the sea folk refused to cross the Arith Ocean. They say the islands of the dead lie on the other side. I wish I knew what they meant by that, but that accursed sea folk close-mouthedness. She sighed, still not raising her head. All we have is one reference to lands under the shadow, beyond the setting sun, beyond the Arith Ocean where the armies of night reign. Nothing there to tell us if the armies Hawkwing sent were enough by themselves to defeat these armies of the night, or even to survive Hawkwing's death. Once the War of the 100 Years started, everyone was too intent on carving out their own part of Hawkwing's empire to spare a thought for his armies across the sea. It seems to me, Mother, that if their descendants still lived, and if they ever intended to return, they would not have waited so long. Then you believe it is not prophecy, daughter? Now, the ancient tree, Varen said, immersed in her own thoughts. There have always been rumors, no more than that while the nation of Almuth still lived, they had a branch of Avendasora, perhaps even a living sapling, and the banner of Almuth was blue for the sky above, black for the earth below, with the spreading tree of life to join them. Of course, Taraboners call themselves the Tree of Man, and claim to be descended from rulers and nobles in the Age of Legends. And Domani claim descent from those who made the Tree of Life in the Age of Legends. There are other possibilities, but you will note, Mother, that at least 3 center around Almuth Plain and Toman Head. The Amerlin's voice became deceptively gentle. Will you make up your mind, daughter? If Arthur Hawkwing's seed is not returning, then this is not prophecy, and it doesn't matter a rotted fish head what ancient tree is meant. I can only give you what I know, Mother, Varen said, looking up from her notes, and leave the decision in your hands. I believe the last of Arthur Hawkwing's foreign armies died long ago, but because I believe it does not make it so. The time of change, of course, refers to the end of an age, and the great lord, the Amerlin slapped the tabletop like a thunderclap. I know very well who the great lord is, daughter. I think you had better go now. She took a deep breath and took hold of herself visibly. Go, Varen. I do not want to become angry with you. I do not want to forget who it was had the cooks leave sweet cakes out at night when I was a novice. Mother, Moiraine said, there is nothing in this to suggest prophecy. Anyone with a little wit and little knowledge could put together as much, and no one has ever said Myrddraal do not have a sly wit. And of course, Varen said calmly, the man who channels must be one of the 3 young men traveling with you, Moiraine. Moiraine stared in shock. Not aware of the world? I am a fool. Before she realized what she was doing, she had reached out to the pulsing glow she always felt there waiting, to the true source. The one power surged along her veins, charging her with energy, muting the sheen of the power from the Amerlin's seat as she did the same. Moiraine had never before even thought of wielding the power against another Aes Sedai. We live in perilous times, and the world hangs in the balance, and what must be done, must be done. It must. Oh, Varen, why did you have to put your nose in where it does not belong? Varen closed her book and slipped it back behind her belt, then looked from one woman to the other. She could not but be aware of the nimbus surrounding each of them, the light that came from touching the true source. Only someone trained in channeling herself could see the glow, but there was no chance of any Aes Sedai missing it in another woman. A hint of satisfaction settled on Varen's face, but no sign that she realized she had hurled a lightning bolt. She only looked as if she had found another piece that fit in a puzzle. Yes, I thought it must be so. Moiraine could not do this alone, and who better to help than her girlhood friend who used to sneak down with her to snitch sweet cakes? She blinked. Forgive me, Mother. I should not have said that. Varen. Varen. The Amerlin shook her head wonderingly. You accuse your sister and me of... I won't even say it. And you are worried that you've spoken too familiarly to the Amerlin seat? You bore a hole in the boat and worry that it's raining. Think what you are suggesting, daughter. It is too late for that, Siwan, Moiraine thought. If we had not panicked and reached for the source, perhaps then, but she is sure now. Why are you telling us this, Varen? She said aloud. If you believe what you say, you should be telling it to the other sisters, to the Reds in particular. Varen's eyes widened in surprise. Yes? Yes, I suppose I should. I hadn't thought of that. But then, if I did, you would be stilled, Moiraine, and you, Mother, and the man gentled. No one has ever recorded the progression in a man who wields the power. When does the madness come, exactly? And how does it take him? How quickly does it grow? Can he still function with his body rotting around him? For how long? Unless he is gentled, what will happen to the young man, whichever he is, will happen whether or not I am there to put down the answers. If he is watched and guided, we should be able to keep some record with reasonable safety, for a time at least. And, too, there is the Koreathon cycle. She calmly returned their startled looks. I assume, Mother, that he is the dragon reborn. I cannot believe you would do this, leave walking free a man who can channel, unless he was the dragon. She thinks only of the knowledge, Moiraine thought wonderingly. The culmination of the direst prophecy the world knows, perhaps the end of the world, and she cares only about the knowledge, but she is still dangerous for that. Who else knows of this? The Amerlin's voice was faint, but still sharp. Seraphel, I suppose. Who else, Varen? No one, Mother. Seraphel is not really interested in anything that someone hasn't already set down in a book, preferably as long ago as possible. She thinks there are enough old books and manuscripts and fragments scattered about, lost or forgotten, to equal 10 times what we have gathered in Tar Valon. She feels certain there is enough of the old knowledge still there to be found for... Enough, sister, Moiraine said. She loosed her hold on the true source, and after a moment felt the Amerlin do the same. It was always a loss to feel the power draining away, like blood and life pouring from an open wound. A part of her wanted to hold on, but unlike some of her sisters, she made it a point of self-discipline not to grow too fond of the feeling. Sit down, Varen, and tell us what you know and how you found it out. Leave out nothing. As Varen took a chair, with a look to the Almerlin for permission to sit in her presence, Moiraine watched her sadly. It is unlikely, Varen began, that anyone who hasn't studied the old records thoroughly would notice anything except that you were behaving oddly. Forgive me. It was nearly 20 years ago, with Tar Valon besieged, that I had my first clue, and that was only... Light help me, Varen. How I loved you for those sweet cakes. and for your bosom to weep on. But I will do what I must do. I will. I must.
Perrin peered around the corner at the retreating back of the Aes Sedai. She smelled of lavender soap, though most would not have scented it, even close up. As soon as she turned out of sight, he hurried for the infirmary door. He had already tried to see Mat once, and that Aes Sedai, Lyanna, he had heard somebody call her, had nearly snapped his head off without even looking around to see who he was. He felt uneasy around Aes Sedai, especially if they started looking at his eyes. Pausing at the door to listen, he could hear no footsteps down the corridor either way, nothing on the other side. He went in and closed it softly behind him. The infirmary was a long room with white walls. The entrances to archers' balconies at either end let in lots of light. Mat was in one of the narrow beds that lined the walls. After last night, Perrin had expected most of the beds to have men in them, but in a moment he realized the keep was full of Aes Sedai. The only thing an Aes Sedai could not cure by healing was death. To him, the room smelled of sickness anyway. Perrin grimaced when he thought of that. Mat lay still, eyes closed, hands unmoving atop his blankets. He looked exhausted. Not sick, really, but as if he had worked 3 days in the fields and only now laid down to rest. He smelled wrong, though. It was nothing Perrin could put a name to, just wrong. Perrin sat down carefully on the bed next to Mat's. He always did things carefully. He was bigger than most people, and had been bigger than the other boys as long as he could remember. He had to be careful so he would not hurt someone accidentally or break things. Now it was second nature to him. He liked to think things through, too, and sometimes talk them over with somebody. With Rand thinking he's a lord, you can't talk to him, and Mat certainly isn't going to have much to say. He had gone into one of the gardens the night before to think things through. The memory still made him a little ashamed. If he had not gone, he would have been in his room to go with Egwene and Mat. Maybe he could have kept them from being hurt. More likely, he knew, he would be in one of those beds like Mat, or dead. But that did not change the way he felt. Still, he had gone to the garden, and it was nothing to do with the Trolloc attack that was worrying him now. Serving women had found him sitting there in the dark, and one of the Lady Amalisa's attendants, the Lady Tamora. As soon as they came upon him, Tamora sent one of the others running, and he had heard her say, "Find Leandrin Sedai, quickly." They had stood there watching him, as if they had thought he might vanish in a puff of smoke like a gleeman. That had been when the first alarm bell rang, and everybody in the keep started running. "Leandrin," he muttered now. "Red Adja. About all they do is hunt for men who channel. You don't think she believes I'm one of those, do you?" Mat did not answer, of course. Perrin rubbed his nose ruefully. "Now I'm talking to myself. I don't need that on top of everything else." Mat's eyelids fluttered. "Who? Perrin? What happened?" His eyes did not open all the way, and his voice sounded as if he were still mostly asleep. "Don't you remember, Mat?" "Remember?" He raised a hand toward his face, and then let it fall again with a sigh. His eyes began to drift. "Remember, Egwene asked me to go down, see Thane." He laughed, and it turned into a yawn. "She didn't ask. Told me. Don't know what happened after." He smacked his lips and resumed the deep, even breathing of sleep. Perrin leaped to his feet as his ears caught the sound of approaching footsteps, but there was nowhere to go. He was still standing there beside Mat's bed when the door opened, and Lyanna came in. She stopped, put her fists on her hips, and looked him slowly up and down. She was nearly as "Now you," her voice quiet yet brisk, "are almost a pretty enough boy to make me wish I was a green. Almost. But if you've disturbed my patient, well, I dealt with brothers almost as big as you before I went to the tower, so you needn't think those shoulders will help you any." Perrin cleared his throat. Half the time he did not understand what women meant when they said things. Not like Rand. He always knows what to say to the girls. He realized he was scowling and wiped it away. He did not want to think about Rand, but he certainly did not want to upset Aes Sedai, especially one who was beginning to tap her foot impatiently. Ah, I didn't disturb him. He's still sleeping, see? So he is. A good thing for you. Now, what are you doing in here? I remember chasing you out once. You needn't think I don't. I only wanted to know how he is. She hesitated. He is sleeping, is how he is, and in a few hours you will get out of that bed and you'll think there was never anything wrong with him. The pause made his hackles rise. She was lying, somehow. Aes Sedai never lied, but they did not always tell the truth either. He was not certain what was going on. Leon been looking for him, lying to him. But he thought it was time he got away from Aes Sedai. There was nothing he could do for Matt. Thank you, he said. I'd better let him sleep then. Excuse me. He tried to slide around her to the door, but suddenly her hand shot out and grabbed his face, tilting it down so she could peer into his eyes. Something seemed to pass through him, a warm ripple that started at the top of his head and went to his feet, then came back again. He pulled his head out of her hands. You're as healthy as a young wild animal, she said, pursing her lips. But if you were born with those eyes, I am a white cloak. They're the only eyes I ever had, he growled. He felt a little abashed, speaking to an Aes Sedai in that tone, but he was as surprised as she when he took her gently by the arms and lifted her to one side, setting her down again out of his way. As they stared at each other, he wondered if his eyes were as wide with shock as hers. Excuse me, he said again, all but ran. My eyes, my white cursed eyes. The morning sunlight caught his eyes, and they glinted like burnished gold. Rand twisted on his bed, trying to find a comfortable position on the thin mattress. Sunlight streamed through the arrow slits, painting the bare stone walls. He had not slept during the remainder of the night. Tired as he was sure he could not sleep now. A leather jerkin lay on the floor between his bed and the wall, but aside from that, he was fully dressed, even to his new boots. His sword stood propped beside the bed, and his quiver rested in a corner across the bundled cloaks. He could not rid himself of the feeling that he should take the chance Moraine had given him and leave immediately. The urge had been with him all night. 3 times he had risen to go. Twice he had gone as far as opening the door. The halls had been empty except for a few servants doing late chores. The way had been clear. But he had to know. Perrin came in, head down and yawning. Rand sat up. How is Egwene and Matt? She's asleep, so they tell me. They wouldn't let me into the women's apartments to see her. Matt is... Suddenly Perrin scowled at the floor. If you're so interested, why haven't you gone to see him yourself? I thought you were not interested in us anymore. You said you weren't. He pulled open his door of the wardrobe and began rummaging for a clean shirt. I did go to the infirmary, Perrin. There was an Aes Sedai there, that tall one who's always with the Amerlin seat. She said Matt was asleep, and I was in the way, and I could come back another time. She sounded like Master Thane ordering the men at the mill. You know how Master Thane is, all full of snap and do it right the first time and do it right now. Perrin did not answer. He just shucked off his coat and pulled his shirt off over his head. Rand studied his friend's back for a moment, then dug up a laugh. You want to hear something? You know what she said to me? The Aes Sedai in the infirmary. You saw her, as tall as most men. And she could almost look me in the eyes. Well, she stared me up and down, and then she muttered, Tall, aren't you? Where were you when I was 16, or even 30? And then she laughed as if it was all a joke. What do you think of that? Perrin finished tugging on a clean shirt and gave him a sidelong look. With his burly shoulders and thick curls, he made Rand think of a hurt bear. A bear that did not understand why he had been hurt. Perrin, if you want to make jokes with Aes Sedai, Perrin broke in, that's up to you. He put something a shirt tail into his breeches. I don't spend much time being witty. Is that the word? Witty with Aes Sedai. But then, I'm only a clumsy blacksmith, and I might be in somebody's way, my lord. Snatching his coat from the floor, he started for the door. Burn me, Perrin, I'm sorry. I was afraid and I thought I was in trouble. Maybe I was. Maybe I still am. I don't know. And I didn't want you and Matt to be in it with me. Light, all the women were looking for me last night. I think that's part of the trouble I'm in. I think so. And Leandrin, she... He threw up his hands. You don't want any part of this. Perrin had stopped, but he stood facing the door and only turned his head enough for Rand to see one golden eye. Looking for you. Maybe they were looking for all of us. No, they were looking for me. I wish they hadn't been, but I know better. Perrin shook his head. Leandrin wanted me anyway, I know. I heard. Rand frowned. Why would she? It doesn't change anything. Look, I opened my mouth and said what I shouldn't. I didn't mean it, Perrin. Now please, would you tell me about Matt? He's asleep. Liana, that's the Aes Sedai, said he would be on his feet in a few hours. He shrugged uncomfortably. I think she was lying. I know Aes Sedai never lie, not so you can catch them, but she was lying, or keeping something back. He paused, looking at Rand sideways. You didn't mean all that? We will leave here together? You and me and Matt? I can't, Perrin. I can't tell you why, but I really do have to go by my... Perrin, wait! The door slammed behind his friend. Rand fell back on the bed. Can't tell you, he muttered. He pounded his fist on the side of the bed. I can't. But you can go now, a voice said in the back of his head. Egwene's going to be all right, and Matt will be up and around in an hour or two. You can go now, before Moraine changes her mind. He started to sit up when a pounding on the door made him leap to his feet. If it was Perrin come back, he would not knock. The pounding came again. Who is it? Lan strode in, pushing the door to behind him with his boot heel. As usual, he wore his sword over a plain coat of green that was nearly invisible in the woods. This time, though, he had a wide golden cord tied high around his left arm, the fringed ends hanging almost to his elbow. On the knot was pinned a golden crane in flight, the symbol of Malkir. The Amelin seat wants you, sheepherder. You can't go like that. Put on that shirt and brush your hair. You look like a haystack. He jerked open the wardrobe and began pawing through the clothes Rand meant to leave behind. Rand stood stiff where he was. He felt as though he had been hit in the head with a hammer. He had expected it, of course, in a way, but he had been sure he would be gone before the summons came. She knows. Light, I'm sure of it. What do you mean, she wants me? I'm leaving, Lan. You were right. I'm going to the stable right now, get my horse and leave. You should have done that last night. The warder tossed a white silk shirt onto the bed. No one refuses an audience with the Amelin seat, sheepherder. Not the Lord Captain Commander of the White Cloaks himself. Pedron Niall might spend the trip planning how to kill her, if he could do it and get away, but he would come. He turned around with one of the high-collared coats in his hands and held it up. This one will do. Tangled, long-thorned briars climbed each red sleeve in a thick gold-embroidered line and ran across each cuff. Golden herons stood on the collars, which were edged with gold. The color is right, too. He seemed to be amused at something, or satisfied. Come on, sheepherder. Change your shirt. Move. Reluctantly, Rand pulled the coarse wool workman's shirt over his head. I feel like a fool, he muttered. A silk shirt? I never wore a silk shirt in my life. And I never wore so fancy a coat, either, even on a feast day. Why do your parents ease me in that? Burn the fool talk about being a lord. If you me in that, he'll never listen to reason. You can't go before the Amelin seat dressed like a groom fresh out of the stable, sheepherder. See your boots. Well, get on with it. You don't keep the Amelin waiting. Wear your sword. My sword? The silk shirt over his head muffled Rand. He yanked it the rest of the way on. In the women's apartments? Lan, if I go for an audience with the Amelin seat, The Amerlin seat. Wearing a sword, she'll... Do nothing, Lan cut him off dryly. If the Amerlin is afraid of you, and it's smarter for you to think she isn't because I don't know anything that could frighten that woman, it won't be for a sword. Now remember, you kneel when you go before her. One knee only, mind, he added sharply. You're not some merchant caught giving short weight. Maybe you had better practice it. I know how I think. I saw the Queen's guards knelt to Queen Morgase. The ghost of a smile touched the warder's lips. Yes, you do it just as they did. That will give them something to think about. Rand frowned. Why are you telling me this, Lan? You're a warder. You're acting as if you are on my side. I am on your side, sheepherder. A little. Enough to help you a bit. The warder's face was stone, and sympathetic words sounded strange in that rough voice. What training you've had I gave you, and I'll not have you grumbling and sniveling. The wheel weaves us all into the pattern as it wills. You have less freedom about it than most. By the light, you can still face it on your feet. You remember who the Amerlin seat is, sheepherder, and you show her proper respect, but you do what I tell you, and you look her in the eye. Well, don't stand there gaping. Tuck in your shirt. Rand shut his mouth and tucked in his shirt. Remember who she is? Burn me what I wouldn't give to forget who she is. Lan kept up a running flow of instructions while Rand shrugged into the red coat and buckled on his sword. What to say and to whom, and what not to say. What to do and what not. How to move, even. He was not sure he could remember it all. Most of it sounded odd and easy to forget. And he was sure whatever he forgot would be just the thing to make the Aes Sedai angry with him. If they aren't already. If Moraine told the Amerlin seat, who else did she tell? Lan, why can't I just leave the way I planned? By the time she knew I was not coming, I'd be a league outside the walls and galloping. She'd have trackers after you before you had gone too. What the Amerlin wants, sheepherder, she gets. He adjusted Rand's sword belt so the heavy buckle was centered. What I do is the best I can for you. Believe it. But why all this? What does it mean? Why do I put my hand over my heart if the Amerlin seat stands up? Why refuse anything but water? Not that I want to eat a meal with her. Then dribble some on the floor and say, the land thirsts. And if she asks how old I am, why tell her how long it is since I was given the sword? I don't understand half of what you've told me. 3 drops, sheepherder. Don't pour it. You sprinkle 3 drops only. You can understand later, so long as you remember now. Think of it as upholding custom. The Amerlin will do with you as she must. If you believe you can avoid it, then you believe you can fly to the moon like Len. You can't escape, but maybe you can hold your own for a while. And perhaps you can keep your pride at least. Like burn me, I am probably wasting my time, but I've nothing better to do. Hold still. From his pocket, the warder produced a long length of wide-fringed golden cord and tied it around Rand's left arm in a complicated knot. On the knot, he fastened a red enameled pin, an eagle with its wings spread. I had that made to give you. Now is as good a time as any. That will make them think. There was no doubt about it now. The warder was smiling. Rand looked down at the pin worriedly. Caltazar, the red eagle of Monetheren. A thorn to the Dark One's foot, he murmured, and it brambled to his hand. He looked at the warder. Monetheren's long dead and forgotten, Lan. It's just a name in a book now. There is only the 2 rivers. Whatever else I am, I'm a shepherd and a farmer, that's all. Well, the sword that could not be broken was shattered in the end, sheepherder, but it fought the shadow to the last. There is one rule above all others for being a man. Whatever comes, face it on your feet. Now, are you ready? The Amerlin seat waits. With a cold knot in the pit of his belly, Rand followed the warder into the hall. Chapter 8. The Dragon Reborn. Rand walked stiff-legged and nervous at first beside the warder. Face it on your feet. It was easy for Lan to say. He had not been summoned by the Amerlin seat. He was not wondering if he would be gentle before the day was done, or worse. Rand felt as if he had something caught in his throat. He could not swallow, and he wanted to badly. The corridors bustled with people, servants going about their morning chores, warriors wearing swords over lounging robes. A few young boys carrying small practice swords stayed near their elders, imitating the way they walked. No sign remained of the fighting, but an air of alertness clung even to the children. Grown men looked like cats waiting for a pack of rats. Ingtar gave Rand and Lan a peculiar look, almost troubled, opening his mouth, then saying nothing as they passed him. Kadjin, tall and lean and sallow, pumped his fists over his head and shouted, Taishar, Malkir! Taishar, Manetheren! True blood of Malkir, true blood of Manetheren. Rand jumped. Light. Why did he say that? Don't be a fool, he told himself. They all know about Manetheren here. They know every old story, if it has fighting in it. Burn me, I have to take a rein on myself. Lan raised his fists in reply. Taishar Shinar! If he made a run for it, could he lose himself in the crowd long enough to reach his horse? If she sends trackers after me. With every step, he grew more tense. As they approached the women's apartments, Lan suddenly snapped. Cat crosses the courtyard. Startled, Rand instinctively assumed a walking stance, as he had been taught. Back straight, but every muscle loose, as if he hung from a wire at the top of his head. It was a relaxed, almost arrogant saunter. Relaxed on the outside, he certainly did not feel it inside. He had no time to wonder what he was doing. They rounded the last corridor and stepped with each other. The women at the entrance to the women's apartments looked up calmly as they came closer. Some sat behind slanted tables, checking large ledgers and sometimes making an entry. Others were knitting or working with needle and embroidery hoop. Ladies in silks kept this watch, as well as women in livery. The arched doors stood open, unguarded except for the women. No more was needed. No Shinaran man would enter uninvited, but any Shinaran man stood ready to defend that door if needed, and he would be aghast at the need. Rand's stomach churned, harsh and acid. They'll take one look at our swords and turn us away. Well, that's what I want, isn't it? If they turn us back, maybe I can still get away. If they don't call the guards down on us. He clung to the stance Lan had given him, as he would to a floating branch in a flood. Holding it was the only thing that kept him from turning tail and running. One of the Lady Amalisa's attendants, Nisira, a round-faced woman, put aside her embroidery and stood as they came to a stop. Her eyes flickered across their swords, and her mouth tightened, but she did not mention them. All the women stopped what they were doing to watch, silent and intent. Honor to you both, Nisira said, bowing her head slightly. She glanced at Rand so quickly he was almost not sure he had seen it. It reminded him of what Perrin had said. The Amarylline seat awaits you. She motioned, and two other ladies, not servants, they were being honored, stepped forward for escorts. The women bowed, a hair more than Nisira had, and motioned them through the archway. They both gave Rand a sidelong glance, then did not look at him again. Were they looking for all of us, or just me? Why all of us? Inside, they got the looks Rand expected. Two men in the women's apartments, where men were rare, and their swords caused more than one raised eyebrow. But none of the women spoke. The two men left knots of conversation in their path, soft murmurs too low for Rand to make out. Lan strode along as if he did not even notice. Rand kept pace behind their escorts, wished he could hear. And then they reached the Amarylline seat's chambers, with three Aes Sedai in the hall outside the door. The tall Aes Sedai, Lyanna, held her gold-flamed staff. Rand did not know the other two, one of the white Aja, and one yellow by their fringe. He remembered their faces, though, staring at him as he had run through these same halls. Smooth Aes Sedai faces with knowing eyes. They studied him with arched eyebrows and pursed lips. The women who had brought Lan and Rand curtsied, handing them over to the Aes Sedai. Lyanna looked Rand over with a slight smile. Despite the smile, her voice had a snap to it. What have you brought the Amarylline seat today, Lan Gaidin? A young lion? Better you don't let any greens see this one, or one of them will bond him before he can take a breath. Greens like to bond them young. Rand wondered if it was really possible to sweat inside your skin. He felt as if he was. He wanted to look at Lan, but he remembered this part of the warder's instructions. I am Randall Thor, son of Tamal Thor, of the Two Rivers, which once was Manetheren. As I have been summoned by the Amerlin seat, Lyanna Sedai, so do I come. I stand ready. He was surprised that his voice did not shake once. Lyanna blinked, and her smile faded to a thoughtful look. This is supposed to be a shepherd, Lan Gaidin. He was not so sure of himself this morning. He is a man, Lyanna Sedai, Lan said firmly. No more and no less. We are what we are. The Aes Sedai shook her head. The world grows stranger every day. I suppose the blacksmith will wear a crown and speak in high chat. Wait here. She vanished inside to announce them. She was only gone a few moments, but Rand was uncomfortably aware of the eyes of the remaining Aes Sedai. He tried to return their gaze levelly, the way Lan had told him to. They put their heads together, whispering. What are they saying? What do they know? Wait, are they going to gentle me? Was that what Lan meant about facing whatever comes? Lyanna returned, motioning Rand to go in. When Lan started to follow, she thrust her staff across his chest, stopping him. Not you, Lan Gaidin. Moiraine Sedai has a task for you. Your lion cub will be safe enough by himself. The door swung shut behind Rand, but not before he heard Lan's voice, fierce and strong, but low for his ear alone. Zashar Manetheren. Moiraine sat to one side of the room, and one of the brown Aes Sedai he had seen in the dungeon sat to the other. But it was the woman in the tall chair behind the wide table who held his eyes. The curtains had been partially drawn over the arrow slits, but the gaps let in enough light behind her to make her face hard to see clearly. He still recognized her, though. The Amerlin seat. Quickly he dropped to one knee, left hand on sword hilt, right fist pressed to the patterned rug, and bowed his head. As you have summoned me, Mother, so have I come. I stand ready. He lifted his head in time to see her eyebrows rise. Do you now, boy? She sounded almost amused, and something else he could not make out. She certainly did not look amused. Stand up, boy. Let me have a look at you. He straightened and tried to keep his face relaxed. It was an effort not to clench his hands. 3 Aes Sedai. How many does it take to gentle a man? They sent a dozen or more after Logain. Would Moiraine do that to me? He met the Amerlin seat's look, eye to eye. She did not blink. Sit, boy, she said finally, gesturing to a ladder-back chair that had been pulled around squarely in front of the table. This will not be short, I fear. Thank you, Mother. He bowed his head, then, as Lan had told him, glanced at the chair and touched his sword. By your leave, Mother, I will stand. The watch is not done. The Amerlin seat made an exasperated sound and looked at Moiraine. Have you let Lan at him, daughter? This will be difficult enough without him picking up waterways. Lan has been teaching all the boys, Mother, Moiraine replied calmly. He has spent a little more time with this one than the others because he carries a sword. The brown Aes Sedai shifted on her chair. The Gaidin are stiff-necked and proud, Mother, but useful. I would not be without Tomas, as you would not lose Ulrich. I have even heard a few Reds say they sometimes wish for a warder. And the Greens, of course. The 3 Aes Sedai were all ignoring him now. This sword, the Amerlin seat said, it appears to be a Huron mark blade. How did he come by that, Moiraine? Tamal Thor left the Two Rivers as a boy, Mother. He had joined the army of Ilion and served in the White Cloak War and the last 2 wars with Tyr. In time, he rose to be a blade master and the second captain of the Companions. After the Aiel War, Tamal Thor returned to the Two Rivers with a wife from Caemlyn and an infant boy. It would have saved much had I known this earlier, but I know it now. Rand stared at Moiraine. He knew Tam had left the Two Rivers and come back with an Outlander wife and the sword. But the rest? Where did you learn all that? Not in Emond's Field. Unless Nynaeve told you more than she's ever told me.
An infant boy? She doesn't say his son, but I am.
Against Tyr. The Amerlin seat frowned slightly. Well, there was blame enough on both sides in those wars. Fool men who would rather fight than talk. Can you tell if the blade is authentic, Varen?
There are tests, Mother. Then take it and test it, daughter.
The three women were not even looking at him. Rand stepped back, gripping the hilt hard. My father gave this sword to me, he said angrily. Nobody is taking it from me. It was only then that he realized Varen had not moved from her chair. He looked at them in confusion, trying to recover his equilibrium. So, the Amerlin seat said, you have some fire in you besides whatever Lan put in. Good. You will need it.
I am what I am, Mother, he managed smoothly enough. I stand ready for what comes.
The Amerlin seat grimaced.
Lan has been at you. Listen to me, boy. In a few hours, Ingtar will leave to find the stolen horn. Your friend Matt will go with him. I expect that your other friend, Perrin, will go also. Do you wish to accompany them?
Matt and Perrin are going? Why? Belatedly, he remembered to add a respectful, Mother.
Do you know of the dagger your friend carried? The twist of her mouth showed what she thought of the dagger. That was taken too. Unless it is found, the link between him and the blade cannot be broken completely, and he will die. You can ride with them if you want, or you can stay here. No doubt Lord Lamar will let you remain as a guest as long as you wish. I will be leaving today as well. Moraine Sedai will accompany me, and so will Egwene and Nynaeve. So you will stay alone if you stay. The choice is yours.
Rand stared at her.
She's saying I can go as I want. Is that what she brought me here for? Matt is dying.
He glanced at Moraine, sitting impassively with her hands folded in her lap. She looked as if nothing in the world could concern her less than where he went.
Which way are you trying to push me, Aes Sedai? Burn me, but I'll go another. But if Matt's dying, I can't abandon him. Light, how are we going to find that dagger?
You do not have to make the choice now, the Amerlin said. She did not seem to care either. But you will have to choose before Ingtar leaves. I will ride with Ingtar, Mother. The Amerlin seat nodded absently.
Now that that is dealt with, we can move on to important matters. I know you can channel, boy. What do you know?
Rand's mouth fell open. Caught up in worrying about Matt, her casual words hit him like a swinging barn door. All of Lan's advice and instructions went spinning. He stared at her, licking his lips. It was one thing to think she knew, entirely another to find out she really did. The sweat finally seeped out on his forehead. She leaned forward in her seat, waiting for his answer, but he had the feeling she wanted to lean back. He remembered what Lan had said. If she's afraid of you, he wanted to laugh. If she was afraid of him. No, I can't. I mean, I didn't do it on purpose. It just happened. I don't want to channel the power. I won't ever do it again. I swear it.
You don't want, the Amerlin seat said. Well, that's wise of you. And foolish, too. Some can be taught to channel. Most cannot. A few, though, have the seed in them at birth. Sooner or later, they wield the one power whether they want to or not, as surely as roe makes fish. You will continue to channel, boy. You can't help it. And you had better learn to channel. Learn to control it. Or you will not live long enough to go mad. The one power kills those who cannot control its flow.
How am I supposed to learn? He demanded. Moraine and Varen just sat there, unruffled, watching him.
Explainers.
How? Moraine claims she can't teach me anything, and I don't know how to learn or what. I don't want to anyway. I want to stop. Can't you understand that? To stop!
I told you the truth, lad, Moraine said. She sounded as if they were having a pleasant conversation. Those who could teach you, the male Aes Sedai, are 3,000 years dead. No Aes Sedai living can teach you to touch Sidene any more than you could learn to touch Sidar. A bird cannot teach a fish to fly, nor a fish teach a bird to swim. I have always thought that was a bad saying, Baron said suddenly. There are birds that dive and swim, and in the sea of storms are fish that fly, with long fins that stretch out as wide as your outstretched arms, and beaks like swords that can pierce. Her words trailed off, and she became flustered. Moraine and the Ameline seat were staring at her without expression. Rand took the interruption to try to regain some control of himself. As Tam had taught him long ago, he formed a single flame in his mind and fed his fears into it, seeking emptiness, the stillness of the void. The flame seemed to grow until it enveloped everything, until it was too large to contain or imagine any longer. With that, it was gone, leaving in its place a sense of peace. At its edges, emotions still flickered, fear and anger like black blotches, but the void held. Thought skimmed across its surface like pebbles across ice. The Aes Sedai's attention was only off him for a moment, but when they turned back, his face was calm. Why are you talking to me like this, Mother? He asked. You should be gentling me. The Ameline seat frowned and turned to Moraine. Did Lan teach him this? No, Mother. He had that from Tam Altho. Why? Rand demanded again. The Ameline seat looked him straight in the eye and said, Because you are the dragon reborn. The void rocked. The world rocked. Everything seemed to spin around him. He concentrated on nothing, and the emptiness returned, the world stayed. No, Mother. I can channel the light, help me, but I am not Rowland Darksbane, nor Gwer Amalasan, nor Urian Stonebow. You can gentle me or kill me, or let me go. But I will not be a tame false dragon on a Tarvalin leash. He heard Baron gasp, and the Amerin's eyes widened, a gaze as hard as blue rock. It did not affect him. It slid off the void within. Where did you hear those names? The Amelin demanded. Who told you Tarvalin pulls the lines on any false dragon? A friend, Mother, he said. A gleeman. His name was Tom Maryland. He's dead now. Moraine made a sound, and he glanced at her. She claimed Tom was not dead, but she had never offered any proof, and he could not see how any man could survive grappling hand-to-hand with a Fade. The thought was extraneous, and it faded away. There was only the void and the oneness now. You are not a false dragon, the Amelin said firmly. You are the true dragon reborn. I'm a shepherd from the Two Rivers, Mother. Daughter, tell him the story. A true story, boy. Listen well. Moraine began speaking. Rand kept his eyes on the Amelin's face, but he heard. Nearly 20 years ago, the Aiel crossed the spine of the world, the Dragon Wall, the only time they have ever done so. They ravaged through Cairhien, destroyed every army sent against them, burned the city of Cairhien itself, and fought all the way to Tarvalin. It was winter and snowing, but cold or heat mean little to an Aiel. The final battle, the last that counted, was fought outside the Shining Walls in the shadow of Dragonmount. In 3 days and nights of fighting, the Aiel were turned back. Or rather, they turned back, for they had done what they came to do, which was to kill King Layman of Cairhien for his sin against the tree. It is then that my story begins, and yours. They came over the Dragon Wall like a flood, all the way to the Shining Walls. Rand waited for the memories to fade, but it was Tam's voice he heard, Tam sick and raving, pulling up secrets from his past. The voice clung outside the void, clamoring to get in. I was one of the accepted then, Moraine said, as was our mother, the Ameline seat. We were soon to be raised to sisterhood. That night we stood attendance on the then Ameline. Her keeper of the chronicles, Gitara Moroso, was there. Every other full sister in Tarvalin was out healing as many wounded as she could find, even the Reds. It was dawn. The fire on the hearth could not keep the cold out. The snow had finally stopped, and in the armament's chambers in the White Tower, we could smell the smoke of outlying villages burned in the fighting. Battles are always hot, even in the snow. Had to get away from the stink of death. Dam's delirious voice clawed at the empty calm inside Rand. The void trembled and shrank, steadied, then wavered again. The Amerlin's eyes bored at him. He felt sweat on his face again. It was all a fever dream, he said. He was sick. He raised his voice. My name is Randall Thor. I am a shepherd. My father is Tamal Thor, and my mother was... Moraine had paused for him, but now her unchanging voice cut him off, soft and relentless. The Koreathon cycle of the prophecies of the dragon says that the dragon will be reborn on the slopes of Dragon Mount, where he died during the breaking of the world. Pt.3 Sedai had the foretelling sometimes. She was old, her hair as white as the snow outside. But when she had the foretelling, it was strong. The morning light through the windows was strengthening as I handed her a cup of tea. The Amelin seat asked me what news there was from the field of battle. And Pt.3 Sedai started up out of her chair, her arms and legs rigid, trembling. Her face as if she looked into the pit of doom at Sheol Ghul, and she cried out, He is born again. I feel him. The dragon takes his first breath on the slope of Dragon Mount. He is coming. He is coming. Light help us. Light help the world. He lies in the snow and cries like the thunder. He burns like the sun. And she fell forward into my arms, dead. Sloped the mountain, heard a baby cry. Gave birth there alone before she died. Child blue with the cold. Rand tried to force Tam's face. The boy grew smaller. A fever dream, he gasped. I couldn't leave a child. I was born in the Two Rivers. I always knew you wanted to pulled his eyes away from the Amerlin's gaze. He tried to force the void to hold. He knew that was not the way, but it was collapsing in him. Yes, lass. Rand is a good name. I am Rand Althor. His legs trembled. And so we knew the dragon was reborn, Moraine went on. The Amerlin swore us to secrecy, we two, for she knew not all the sisters would see the rebirth as it must be seen. She set us to searching. There were many fatherless children after that battle, too many. But we found a story that one man had found an infant on the mountain. That was all. A man and an infant boy. So we searched on. For years we searched, finding other clues, poring over the prophecies. He will be of the ancient blood and raised by the old blood. That was one. There were others. But there are many places where the old blood, descended from the age of legends, remains strong. Then in the Two Rivers, where the old blood of Manetheren seethes still like a river in flood, in Emond's Field, I found 3 boys whose name days were within weeks of the Battle of Dragonmount. And one of them can channel. Do you think Trollocs came after you just because you are Taviran? You are the dragon reborn. Rand's knees gave way. He dropped to a squat, hands slapping the rug to catch himself from falling on his face. The void was gone, the stillness shattered. He raised his head, and they were looking at him, the 3 Aes Sedai. Their faces were serene, smooth as unruffled ponds, but their eyes did not blink. My father is Tamal Thor, and I was born... They stared at him unmoving. They're lying. I am not what they say. Some way, somehow, they're lying. I will not be used by you. An anchor is not demeaned by being used to hold a boat, the Amelin said. You were made for a purpose, Randall Thor. When the winds of Tarmangaden scour the earth, you will face the shadow and bring forth light again in the world. The prophecies must be fulfilled, or the Dark One will break free and remake the world in his image. The last battle is coming, and You were born to unite mankind and lead them against the Dark One.
Balsamon is dead, Rand said hoarsely. The Amelin snorted like a stable hand.
If you believe that, you are as much a fool as the Domani. Many there believe he is dead, or say they do, but I notice they still won't risk naming him. The Dark One lives, and he is breaking free. You will face the Dark One. It is your destiny.
It is your destiny. He had heard that before, in a dream, that had maybe not been entirely a dream. He wondered what the Amelin would say if she knew Balsamon had spoken to him in dreams. That's done with. Balsamon is dead. I saw him die. Suddenly it came to him that he was crouching like a toad, huddling under their eyes. He tried to form the void again, but voices whirled through his head, sweeping away every effort. It is your destiny. Babe lying in the snow. You are the dragon reborn. Balsamon is dead. Rand is a good name, Kari. I will not be used. Drawing on his own native stubbornness, he forced himself back upright. Face it on your feet. You can keep your pride, at least. The three Aes Sedai watched with no expression. What? With an effort, he steadied his voice. What are you going to do to me? Nothing, the Amelin said, and he blinked. It was not the answer he had expected, the one he had feared. You say you want to accompany your friend with Ingtar, and you may. I have not marked you out in any way. Some of the sisters may know you are Taviran, but no more. Only we three know who you truly are. Your friend Perrin will be brought to me as you were, and I will visit your other friend in the infirmary. You may go as you will, without fear that we will set the Red Sisters on you. Who you truly are. Anger flared up in him, hot and corrosive. He forced it to stay inside, hidden. Why? The prophecies must be fulfilled. We let you walk free, knowing what you are, because otherwise the world we know will die, and the Dark One will cover the earth with fire and death. Mark me, not all Aes Sedai feel the same. There are some here in Faldara who would strike you down if they knew a tenth of what you are, and feel no more remorse than for gutting a fish. But then there are men who've no doubt laughed with you, who would do the same if they knew. Have a care, Randall Thor, Dragon Reborn. He looked at each of them in turn. Prophecies are no part of me. They returned his gaze so calmly it was hard to believe they were trying to convince him he was the most hated, the most feared man in the history of the world. He had gone right through fear and come out the other side in some place cold. Anger was all that kept him warm. They could gentle him or burn him to a crisp where he stood, and he no longer cared. A part of Land's instructions came back to him. Left hand on the hilt, he twisted the sword behind him, catching the scabbard in his right, then bowed, arms straight. By your leave, mother. May I depart this place? I give you leave to go, my son. Straightening, he stood there a moment longer. I will not be used, he told them. There was a long silence as he turned and left.
The silence stretched on in the room after Rand left until it was broken by a long breath from the Amelin. I cannot make myself like what we just did, she said. It was necessary, but did it work, daughters? Moiraine shook her head, just the slightest movement. I do not know, but it was necessary, and is. Necessary, Varen agreed. She touched her forehead, then peered at the dampness on her fingers. He is strong, and as stubborn as you said, Moiraine. Much stronger than I expected. We may have to gentle him after all before... Her eyes widened. But we cannot, can we? The prophecies. The light forgive us for what we are loosing on the world. The prophecies, Moiraine said, nodding. Afterwards, we will do as we must, as we do now. As we must, the Amelin said. Yes, but when he learns to channel, the light help us all. The silence returned. There was a storm coming. Nynaeve felt it. A big storm, worse than she had ever seen. She could listen to the wind and hear what the weather would be. All wisdoms claimed to be able to do that, though many could not. Nynaeve had felt more comfortable with the ability before learning it was a manifestation of the power. Any woman who could listen to the wind could channel, though most were probably as she had been, unaware of what she was doing, getting it only in fits and starts. This time, though, something was wrong. Outside, the morning sun was a golden ball in a clear blue sky, and birds sang in the gardens, but that was not it. There would have been nothing to listening to the wind if she could not foretell the weather before the signs were visible. There was something wrong with the feeling this time, something not quite the way it usually was. The storm felt distant, too far off for her to feel at all. Yet it felt as if the sky above should have been pouring down rain and snow and hail all at the same time, with winds howling to shake the stones of the keep. And she could feel the good weather, too, lasting for days yet, but that was muted under the other. A bluefinch perched in an arrow slit, like a mockery of her weather sense, peering into the hallway. When it saw her, it vanished in a flash of blue and white feathers. She stared at the spot where the bird had been. There is a storm, and there isn't. It means something, but what? Far down the hall, full of women and small children, she saw Rand striding away, his escort of women half running to keep up. Nynaeve nodded firmly. If there was a storm that was not a storm, he would be the center of it. Gathering her skirts, she hurried after him. Women with whom she had grown friendly since coming to Faldara tried to speak to her. They knew Rand had come with her and that they were both from the Two Rivers, and they wanted to know why the Amerlin had summoned him. The Amerlin's seat. Ice in the pit of her belly, she broke into a run, but before she left the women's apartments, she had lost him around too many corners and beyond too many people. Which way did he go? She asked Misura. There was no need to say who. She heard Rand's name in the conversation of the other women clustered around the arched doors. I don't know, Nynaeve. He came out as fast as if he had Heartsbane himself at his heels. As well he might, coming here with a sword at his belt. The Dark One should be the least of his worries after that. What is the world coming to? And him presented to the Amerlin in her chambers, no less. Tell me, Nynaeve, is he really a prince in your land? The other women stopped talking and leaned closer to listen. Nynaeve was not sure what she answered, something that made them let her go on. She hurried away from the women's apartments, head swiveling at every crossing corridor to look for him, fists clenched. Light, what have they done to him? I should have gotten him away from Warraine somehow, the light blinder. I'm his wisdom. Are you? A small voice taunted. You've abandoned Emmons Field to fend for itself. Can you still call yourself their wisdom? I did not abandon them, she told herself fiercely. I brought Mavra Malin up from Devon Ride to look after matters till I get back. She can deal well enough with the mayor and the village council, and she gets on well with the women's circle. Mavra will have to get back to her own village. No village can do without its wisdom for long. Nynaeve cringed inside. She had been gone months from Emmons Field. I am the wisdom of Emmons Field, she said aloud. A liveried servant carrying a bolt of cloth blinked at her, then bowed low before scurrying off. By his face, he was eager to be anywhere else. Blushing, Nynaeve looked around to see if anyone had noticed. There were only a few men in the hall, engrossed in their own conversations, and some women in black and gold going about their business, giving her a bow or curtsy as she passed. She had had that argument with herself 100 times before, but this was the first time it had come to talking to herself out loud. She muttered under her breath, then pressed her lips firmly together when she realized what she was doing. She was finally beginning to realize her search was futile when she came on land, his back to her, looking down on the outer courtyard through an arrow slit. The noise from the courtyard was all horses and men, neighing and shouting. So intent was Land that he did not for once seem to hear her. She hated the fact that she could never sneak up on him, however softly she stepped. She'd been accounted good at woodscraft back in Emmons Field, though it was not a skill in which many women took any interest. She stopped in her tracks, pressing her hands to her stomach to quiet a flutter. I ought to dose myself with rannel and sheep's tongue root, she thought sourly. It was the mixture she gave anyone who moped about and claimed they were sick or behaved like a goose. Rannel and sheep's tongue root would perk you up a little and did no harm, but mainly it tasted horrible, and the taste lasted all day. It was a perfect cure for acting the fool. Safe from his eyes, she studied the length of him, leaning against the stone and fingering his chin as he studied what was going on below. He's too tall, for one thing, and old enough to be my father, for another. A man with a face like that would have to be cruel. No, he's not that. Never that. And he was a king. His land was destroyed while he was a child, and he would not claim a crown, but he was a king for that. What would a king want with a village woman? He's a warder, too, bonded to Moiraine. She has his loyalty to death and ties closer than any lover, and she has him. She has everything I want. The light burn her. He turned from the arrow slit, and she whirled to go. Nynaeve. His voice caught and held her like a noose. I wanted to speak to you alone. You always seem to be in the women's apartments, or in company. It took an effort to face him, but she was sure her features were calm when she looked up at him. I'm looking for Rand. She was not about to admit to avoiding him. We said all we need to say long ago, you and I. I shamed myself, which I will not do again, and you told me to go away. I never said, he took a deep breath. I told you I had nothing to offer for bride price but widow's clothes. Not a gift any man could give a woman. Not a man who can call himself a man. I understand, she said coolly. In any case, a king does not give gifts to village women, and this village woman would not take them. Have you seen Rand? I need to talk to him. He was to see the Amerlin. Do you know what she wanted with him? His eyes blazed like blue ice in the sun. She stiffened her legs to keep from stepping back, and met him glare for glare. The Dark One take Rand al'Thor and the Amerlin seat both, he grated, pressing something into her hand. I will make you a gift, and you will take it if I have to chain it around your neck. She pulled her eyes away from his. He had a stare like a blue-eyed hawk when he was angry. In her hand was a signet ring, heavy gold and worn with age, almost large enough for both her thumbs to fit through. On it a crane flew above a lance and crown, all carefully wrought in detail. Her breath caught. The ring of Malkieri kings. Forgetting to glare, she lifted her face. I cannot take this, Lan. He shrugged in an offhand way. It is nothing. Old and useless now. But there are those who would know it when they saw it. Show that and you will have guest right, and help if you need it, from any lord in the borderlands. Show it to a warder and he will give aid, or carry a message to me. Send it to me, or a message marked with it, and I will come to you without delay and without fail. This I swear. Her vision blurred at the edges. If I cry now, I will kill myself. I can't. I do not want a gift from you, Al-Lan Mandragoran. Here, take it. He fended off her attempts to give the ring back to him. His hand enveloped hers, gentle but firm as a shackle. Then take it for my sake as a favor to me, or throw it away if it displeases you. I've no better use for it. He brushed her cheek with a finger and she gave a start. I must go now, Nynaeve, Mashiara. The Amerlin wishes to leave before midday, and there is much yet to be done. Perhaps we will have time to talk on the journey to Tar Valon. He turned and was gone, striding down the hall. Nynaeve touched her cheek. She could still feel where he had touched her. Mashiara, beloved of heart and soul, it meant, but a love lost, too. Lost beyond regaining. Fool woman. Stop acting like a girl with her hair still not braided. It's no use letting him make you feel. Clutching the ring tightly, she turned around and jumped when she found herself face to face with Moiraine. How long have you been there? She demanded. Not long enough to hear anything I should not have, the Aes Sedai replied smoothly. We will be leaving soon. I heard that. You must see to your packing. Leaving. It had not penetrated when Lan said it. I will have to say goodbye to the boys, she muttered, then gave Moiraine a sharp look. What have you done to Rand? He was taken to the Ammerman. Why? Did you tell her about... She could not say it. He was from her own village, and she was just enough older than he to have looked after him a time or two when he was little, but she could not even think about what he had become without her stomach twisting. The Ammerlin will be seeing all three, Nynaeve. Taviran are not so common that she would miss the chance to see three together in one place. Perhaps she will give them a few words of encouragement, since they are riding with Ingtar to hunt those who stole the horn. They will be leaving about the time we do, so you had better hurry with any farewells. Nynaeve dashed to the nearest arrow slit and peered down at the outer courtyard. Horses were everywhere, pack animals and saddle horses, and men hurrying about them, calling to each other. The only clear space was where the Ammerlin's palanquin stood, its paired horses waiting patiently without any attendants. Some of the warders were out there looking over their mounts, and on the other side of the courtyard, Ingtar stood with a knot of Shinarans around him in armor. Sometimes a warder or one of Ingtar's men crossed the paving stones to exchange a word. I should have gotten the boys away from you, she said, still looking out. Egwene, too, if I could do it without killing her. Why did she have to be born with this cursed ability? I should have taken them back home. They are more than old enough to be off apron strings, Moiraine said dryly. And you know very well why you could never do that. For one of them, at least. Besides, it would mean leaving Egwene to go to Tar Valon alone. Or have you decided to forego Tar Valon yourself? If your own use of the power is not schooled, you will never be able to use it against me. Nynaeve spun to face the Aes Sedai, her jaw dropping. She could not help it. I don't know what you are talking about. Did you think I did not know, child? Well, as you wish it. I take it that you are coming to Tar Valon? Yes, I thought so. Nynaeve wanted to hit her, to knock away the brief smile that flashed across the Aes Sedai's face. Aes Sedai had not been able to wield power openly since the breaking, much less the one power, but they plotted and manipulated, pulled strings like puppet masters, used thrones and nations like stones on a stone's board. She wants to use me too somehow. If a king or a queen, why not a wisdom? Just the way she's using Rand. I'm no child, Aes Sedai. What are you doing with Rand now? Have you not used him enough? I don't know why you have not had him gentled. Now the Ammerlin's here with all those other Aes Sedai, but you must have a reason. It must be some plot you're hatching. If the Ammerlin knew what you were up to, I wager she'd... Moiraine cut her off. What possible interest could the Ammerlin have in the shepherd? Of course, if he were brought to her attention in the wrong way, he might be gentled or even killed. He is what he is, after all. And there is considerable anger about last night. Everyone is looking for whom to blame. The Aes Sedai fell silent and let the silence stretch. Nynaeve stared at her, grinding her teeth. Yes, Moiraine said finally. Much better to let a sleeping lion sleep. Best you see to your packing. She moved off in the direction Lan had gone, seeming to glide across the floor. Grimacing, Nynaeve swung her fist back against the wall. The ring dug at her palm. She opened her hand to look at it. The ring seemed to heat her anger, focus her hate. I will learn. You think because you know you can escape me. But I will learn better than you think, and I will pull you down for what you've done. For what you've done to Matt and to Perrin. For Rand.
There's one down.
Him and the Creator shelter him. Especially for Rand. Her hand closed around the heavy circlet of gold. And for me. Egwene watched the liveried maid folding her dresses into a leather-covered travel chest, still a little uncomfortable, even after nearly a month's practice, with someone else doing what she could very well have done herself. They were such beautiful dresses, all gifts from the Lady Amalisa, just like the gray silk riding dress she wore, though that was plain except for a few white morning star blossoms worked on the breast. Many of the dresses were much more elaborate. Any one of them would shine at Sunday or at bell time. She sighed, remembering that she would be in Tarvallen for the next Sunday, not Emmons Field. From the little Moiraine had told her of novice training, almost nothing really. She expected she might not be home for bell time in the spring or even the Sunday after that. Nynaeve put her head into the room. Are you ready? She came the rest of the way in. We must be down in the courtyard soon. She wore a riding dress, too, in blue silk with red lover's knots on the bosom, another gift from Amalisa. Nearly, Nynaeve. I'm almost sorry to be going. I don't suppose we'll have many chances in Tarvallen to wear the nice dresses Amalisa gave us. She gave an abrupt laugh. Still, Wisdom, I won't miss being able to bathe without looking over my shoulder the whole time. Much better to bathe alone, Nynaeve said briskly. Her face did not change, but after a moment her cheeks colored. Egwene smiled. She's thinking about Lan. It was still odd to think of Nynaeve, the wisdom, mooning after a man. She did not think it would be wise to put it to Nynaeve in quite that way, but of late sometimes the wisdom acted as strangely as any girl who had set her heart on a particular man, and one who doesn't have enough sense to be worthy of her at that. She loves him, and I can see he loves her, so why can't he have sense enough to speak up? I don't think you should call me Wisdom any longer, Nynaeve said suddenly. Egwene blinked. It was not required exactly, and Nynaeve never insisted on it unless she was angry or being formal. But this, why ever not? You are a woman now. Nynaeve glanced at her unbraided hair, and Egwene resisted the urge to hurriedly twist it into a semblance of a braid. Aes Sedai wore their hair any way they wanted, but wearing hers loose had become a symbol of starting on a new life. You are a woman, Nynaeve repeated firmly. We are two women, a long way from Emmons Field, and it will be longer still before we see home again. It will be better if you simply call me Nynaeve. We will see home again, Nynaeve. We will. Don't try to comfort the wisdom girl, Nynaeve said gruffly, but she smiled. There was a knock at the door, but before Egwene could open it, Nisura came in, agitation all over her face. Egwene, that young man of yours is trying to come into the women's apartments. She sounded scandalized. And wearing a sword. Just because the Amerlin let him enter that way, Lord Rand should know better. He is causing an uproar. Egwene, you must speak to him. Lord Rand, Nynaeve snorted. That young man is growing too big for his britches. When I get my hands on him, I'll lord him. Egwene put a hand on Nynaeve's arm. Let me speak to him, Nynaeve. Alone. Oh, very well. The best of men are not much better than housebroken. Nynaeve paused and added half to herself. But then, the best of them are worth the trouble of housebreaking. Egwene shook her head as she followed Nisura into the hall. Even half a year before, Nynaeve would never have added the second part. But she'll never housebreak Lan. Her thoughts turned to Rand. Causing an uproar, was he? Housebreaking, she muttered. If he hasn't learned manners by this time, I'll skin him alive. Sometimes that is what it takes, Nisura said, walking quickly. Men are never more than half civilized until they're wedded. She gave Egwene a sidelong glance. Do you intend to marry Lord Rand? I do not mean to pry, but you are going to the White Tower, and Aes Sedai seldom wed. None but some of the green Ajah that I've ever heard, and not many of them, and Egwene could supply the rest. She'd heard the talk in the women's apartments about a suitable wife for Rand. At first it had caused stabs of jealousy and anger. He had been all but promised to her since they were children, but she was going to be an Aes Sedai, and he was what he was, a man who could channel. She could marry him and watch him go mad, watch him die. The only way to stop it would be to have him gentled. I can't do that to him. I can't. I do not know, she said sadly. Nisura nodded. No one will poach where you have a claim, but you are going to the tower, and he will make a good husband, once he has been trained. There he is. The women gathered around the entrance to the women's apartments, both inside and out, were all watching three men in the hallway outside. Rand, with his sword buckled over his red coat, was being confronted by Agomar and Kajin. Neither of them wore a sword. Even after what had happened in the night, these were still the women's apartments. Egwene stopped at the back of the crowd. "You understand why you cannot go in," Agomar was saying. "I know that things are different in Andor, but you do understand." "I didn't try to go in." Rand sounded as if he had explained all this more than once already. "I told the Lady Nisura I wanted to see Egwene, and she said Egwene was busy and I'd have to wait. All I did was shout for her from the door. I did not try to enter. You'd have thought I was naming the Dark One the way they all started in on me." "Women have their own ways," Kajin said. He was tall for a Shinaran, almost as tall as Rand, lanky and sallow. His topknot was black as pitch. "They set the rules for the women's apartments, and we abide by them even when they are foolish." A number of eyebrows were raised among the women, and he hastily cleared his throat. "You must send a message in if you wish to speak to one of the women, but it will be delivered when they choose, and until it is, you must wait. That is our custom." "I have to see her," Rand said stubbornly. "We're leaving soon. Not soon enough for me, but I still have to see Egwene. We will get the Horn of Valir and the dagger back, and that will be the end of it. The end of it. But I want to see her before I go." Egwene frowned. He sounded odd. "No need to be so fierce," Kajin said. "You and Ingtar will find the horn or not, and if not, then another will retrieve it. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, and we are but threads in the pattern." "Do not let the horn seize you, Rand," Agomar said. "It can take hold of a man. I know how it can, and that is not the way. A man must seek duty, not glory. What will happen will happen. If the Horn of Valir is meant to be sounded for the light, then it will be." "Here is your Egwene," Kajin said, spotting her. Agomar looked around and nodded when he saw her with Nisura. "I will leave you in her hands, Randolph. Remember, here, her words are law, not yours. Lady Nisura, do not be too hard on him. He only wished to see his young woman, and he does not know our ways." Egwene followed Nisura as the Shinaran woman threaded her way through the watching women. Nisura inclined her head briefly to Agomar and Kajin. She pointedly did not include Rand. Her voice was tight. "Lord Agomar, Lord Kajin, he should know this much of our ways by now, but he is too big to spank, so I will let Egwene deal with him." Agomar gave Rand a fatherly pat on the shoulder. "You see, you will speak with her, if not exactly in the way you wished. Come, Kajin, we have much to see to yet. The Amerlin still insists on—" His voice trailed away as he and the other man left. Rand stood there, looking at Egwene. The women were still watching, Egwene realized, watching her as well as Rand, waiting to see what she would do. "So I'm supposed to deal with him, am I?" Yet she felt her heart going out to him. His hair needed brushing. His face showed anger, defiance, and weariness. "Walk with me," she told him. A murmur started up behind them as he walked down the hall beside her, away from the women's apartments. Rand seemed to be struggling with himself, hunting for what to say. "I've heard about your exploits," she said finally. "Running through the women's apartments last night with a sword, wearing a sword to an audience with the Amerlin seat." He still said nothing, only walked along, frowning at the floor. "She didn't hurt you, did she?" She could not make herself ask if he had been gentled. He looked anything but gentle, but she had no idea what a man looked like afterwards. He gave a jerk. "No, she didn't. Egwene, the Amerlin—" He shook his head. "She didn't hurt me." She had the feeling he had been going to say something else entirely. Usually she could ferret out whatever he wanted to hide from her, but when he really wanted to be stubborn, she could more easily dig a brick out of a wall with her fingernails. By the set of his jaw, he was at his most stubborn right now. "What did she want with you, Rand?" "Nothing important. Tavira." She wanted to see Taviran. His face softened as he looked down at her. What about you, Egwene? Are you all right? Moiraine said you would be, but you were so still. I thought you were dead at first. Well, I'm not. She laughed. She could not remember anything that had happened after she had asked Matt to go to the dungeons with her, not until waking in her own bed that morning. From what she had heard of the night, she was almost glad she could not remember. Moiraine said she would have left me a headache for being foolish if she could have healed the rest and not that, but she couldn't. I told you Thane was dangerous, he muttered. I told you, but you wouldn't listen. If that's the way you are going to talk, she said firmly, I will give you back to Nisura. She won't talk to you the way I am. The last man who tried to push his way into the women's apartments spent a month up to his elbows in soapy water, helping with the women's laundry, and he was only trying to find his betrothed and make up an argument. At least he knew enough not to wear his sword. The light knows what they do to you. Everybody wants to do something to me, he growled. Everybody wants to use me for something. Well, I won't be used. Once we find the horn and Matt's dagger, I'll never be used again. With an exasperated grunt, she caught his shoulders and made him face her. She glared up at him. If you don't start talking sense, Randall Thor, I swear I will box your ears. Now you sound like Nynaeve. He laughed. As he looked down at her, though, his laughter faded. I suppose I'll never see you again. I know you have to go to Tarvalon. I know that. And you'll become an Aes Sedai. I'm done with Aes Sedai, Egwene. I won't be a puppet for them. Not from Moiraine or any of them. He looked so lost she wanted to put his head on her shoulder, and so stubborn she really did want to box his ears. Listen to me, you great ox. I am going to be an Aes Sedai, and I'll find a way to help you. I will. The next time you see me, you will likely want to gentle me. She looked around hastily. They were alone in their stretch of the hall. If you don't watch your tongue, I will not be able to help you. Do you want everyone to know? Too many know already, he said. Egwene, I wish things were different, but they aren't. I wish... Take care of yourself, and promise me you won't choose the Red Aja. Tears blurred her vision as she threw her arms around him. You take care of yourself, she said fiercely into his chest. If you don't, I'll... She thought she heard him murmur, I love you. And then he was firmly unwrapping her arms, gently moving her away from him. He turned and strode away from her, almost running. She jumped when Nisura touched her arm. He looks as if you set him a task he won't enjoy, but you mustn't let him see you cry over it. That negates the purpose. Come, Nynaeve wants you. Scrubbing her cheeks, Egwene followed the other woman. Take care of yourself, you wool-headed lummox. Light, take care of him.
Chapter 9. Leave-takings. The outer courtyard was in ordered turmoil when Rand finally reached it with his saddlebags and the bundle containing the harp and flute. The sun climbed toward midday. Men hurried around the horses, tugging at saddle girths and pack harness, voices raised. Others darted with last-minute additions to the pack saddles, or water for the men working, or dashed off to fetch something just remembered. But everyone seemed to know exactly what they were doing and where they were going. The guard walks and archers' balconies were crowded again, and excitement crackled in the morning air. Hooves clattered on the paving stones. One of the pack horses began kicking, and stablemen ran to calm it. The smell of horses hung thick. Rand's cloak tried to flap in the breeze that rippled the swooping hawk banners on the towers, but his bow, slung across his back, held it down. From outside the open gates came the sounds of the Amerlin's pikemen and archers forming up in the square. They had marched around from a side gate. One of the trumpeters tested his horn. Some of the warders glanced at Rand as he walked across the courtyard. A few raised eyebrows when they saw the heron-marked sword, but none spoke. Half wore the cloaks that were so queasy-making to look at. Mondar, Lan's stallion, was there, tall and black and fierce-eyed, but the man himself was not, and none of the Aes Sedai, none of the women, were in evidence yet either. Moiraine's white mare, Aldine, stepped daintily beside the stallion. Rand's bay stallion was with the other group on the far side of the courtyard with Ingtar, and the bannerman holding Ingtar's gray owl banner, and 20 other armored men with lances tipped with 2 feet of steel, all mounted already. The bars of their helmets covered their faces, and golden surcoats with the black hawk on the chest hid their plate and mail. Only Ingtar's helmet had a crest, a crescent moon above his brow, points up. Rand recognized some of the men. Rough-tongued Uno with a long scar down his face and only one eye. Ragan and Masima. Others who had exchanged a word or played a game of stones. Ragan waved to him, and Uno nodded. But Masima was not the only one who gave him a cold stare and turned away. Their pack horses stood placidly, tails swishing. The big bay danced as Rand tied his saddlebags and bundled behind the high-cantled saddle. He put his foot in the stirrup and murmured, "Easy, Red," as he swung into the saddle. But he let the stallion frisk away some of his stable-bound energy. To Rand's surprise, Loyal appeared from the direction of the stables, riding to join them. The Ogire's hairy fetlocked mount was as big and heavy as a prime Duran stallion. Beside it, all the other animals looked the size of Bella. But with Loyal in the saddle, the horse seemed almost a pony. Loyal carried no weapon that Rand could see. He had never heard of any Ogire using a weapon. Their steading were protection enough. And Loyal had his own priorities, his own ideas of what was needed for a journey. The pockets of his long coat had a telltale bulge, and his saddlebag showed the square imprints of books. The Ogier stopped his horse a little way off and looked at Rand, his tufted ears twitching uncertainly. "I didn't know you were coming," Rand said. "I think you would have had enough of traveling with us. This time there's no telling how long it will be, or where we will end up." Loyal's ears lifted a little.
There was no telling when I first met you either. Besides, what held then holds now. I can't let the chance pass to see history actually weave itself around Tabiran. And to help find the horn.
Matt and Perrin rode up behind Loyal and paused. Matt looked a little tired around the eyes, but his face wore a bloom of health. "Matt," Rand said, "I'm sorry for what I said. Perrin, I didn't mean it. I was being stupid." Matt only glanced at him, then shook his head and mouthed something to Perrin that Rand could not hear. Matt had only his bow and quiver, but Perrin also wore his axe at his belt with its big half-moon blade balanced by a thick spike. "Matt? Perrin? Really, I didn't..." They rode on toward Ingtar.
"That is not a coat for traveling, Rand,"
Loyal said. Rand glanced down at the golden thorns climbing his crimson sleeve and grimaced. Small wonder Matt and Perrin still think I'm putting on airs. On returning to his room, he had found everything already packed and sent on. All of the plain coats he had been given were on the pack horses, so the servant said. Every coat left in the wardrobe was at least as ornate as the one he wore. His saddlebags held nothing in the way of clothes but a few shirts, some wool stockings, and a spare pair of breeches. At least he had removed the golden cord from his sleeve, though he had the red eagle pin in his pocket. Lan had meant it for a gift, after all. "I'll change when we stop tonight," he muttered. He took a deep breath. "Loyal, I said things to you I should not have, and I hope you'll forgive me. You have every right to hold them against me, but I hope you won't." Loyal grinned and his ears stood up. He moved his horse closer.
"I say things I should not all the time. The elders always said I spoke an hour before I thought."
Suddenly Lan was at Rand's stirrup, in his gray-green scaled armor that would make him all but disappear in forest or darkness. "I need to talk to you, sheepherder." He looked at Loyal. "Alone, if you please, builder." Loyal nodded and moved his big horse away. "I don't know if I should listen to you," Rand told the warder. "These fancy clothes and all those things you told me, they didn't help much." "When you can't win a big victory, sheepherder, learn to settle for small ones. If you made them think of you as something more than a farm boy who'll be easy to handle, then you won a small victory. Now be quiet and listen. I've only time for one last lesson, the hardest. Sheathing the sword. You spent an hour every morning making me do nothing but draw this bloody sword and put it back in the scabbard. Standing, sitting, lying down. I think I can manage to get it back in the sheath without cutting myself.
I said, listen, sheep herder, the water growled.
There will come a time
You must achieve a goal at all costs.
it may come in attack or in defense.
The only way will be to allow the sword to be sheathed in your own body.
It's crazy, Rand said. Why would I ever... The water cut him off. You will know when it comes, sheep herder. When the price is worth the gain and there is no other choice left to you. That is called sheathing the sword. Remember it. The Amerlin appeared, striding across the crowded courtyard with Lyanna and her staff, and Lord Oglamar at her shoulder. Even in the green velvet coat, the Lord of Faldara did not look out of place among so many armored men. There was still no sign of the other Aes Sedai. As they went by, Rand caught part of their conversation.
But mother, Oglamar was protesting, you've had no time to rest from your journey here. Stay at least a few days more. I promise you a feast tonight such as you could hardly get in Tarvalin.
The Amerlin shook her head without breaking stride.
I cannot, Oglamar. You know I would if I could. I had never planned to remain so long, and matters urgently require my presence in the White Tower. I should be there now.
Mother, it shames me that you come one day and leave the next. I swear to you, there will be no repetition of last night. I have tripled the guard in the city gates as well as the keep. I have tumblers in from the town and a bard coming from Mos Shirara. My King Isa will be on his way from Falmoran. I sent word as soon as... Their voices faded as they crossed the courtyard, swallowed up by the din of preparation. The Amerlin never as much as glanced in Rand's direction. When Rand looked down, the water was gone and nowhere to be seen. Loyal brought his horse back to Rand's side.
That is a hard man to catch and hold, isn't he, Rand? He's not here, then he's here, then he's gone, and you don't see him coming or going.
Sheathing the sword. Rand shivered. Warders must all be crazy. The warder the Amerlin was speaking to suddenly sprang into his saddle. He was at a dead gallop before he reached the wide standing gates. She stood watching him go, and her stance seemed to urge him to go faster. Where is he headed in such a hurry? Rand wondered aloud.
I heard, Loyal said, that she was sending someone out today, all the way to Ara Doman. There is word of some sort of trouble on Almuth Plain. The Amerlin seat wants to know exactly what. What I don't understand is why now. From what I hear, the rumors of this trouble came from Tarvalin with the Aes Sedai.
Rand felt cold. Egwene's father had a big map back at home, a map Rand had pored over more than once, dreaming before he found out what the dreams were like when they came true. It was old, that map, showing some lands and nations the merchants from outside said no longer existed. But Almuth Plain was marked, butting against Toman Head. We will meet again on Toman Head. It was all the way across the world, he knew, on the Arath Ocean. It has nothing to do with us, he whispered. Nothing to do with me. Loyal appeared not to have heard. Rubbing the side of his nose with a finger like a sausage, the Ogier was still peering at the gate where the warder had vanished.
If she wanted to know, why not send someone before she left Tarvalin? But you humans are always sudden and excitable. And shouting.
His ears stiffened with embarrassment.
I am sorry, Rand. You see what I mean about speech? I'm rash and excitable sometimes myself, you know.
Rand laughed. It was a weak laugh, but it felt good to have something to laugh at. Maybe if we lived as long as you Ogier, we'd be more settled. Loyal was 90 years old. By Ogier standards, not old enough by 10 years to be outside the steading alone. That he had gone anyway was proof, he maintained, of his rashness. If Loyal was an excitable Ogier, Rand thought most of them must be made of stone.
Perhaps so,
Loyal mused.
But you humans do so much with your lives. We do nothing but huddle in our steading. Planting the groves, and even the building were all done before the long exile ended.
It was the groves Loyal held dear, not the cities men remembered the Ogier for building. It was the groves planted to remind Ogier builders of the steading, Loyal had left his home to see.
Since we found our way back to the steading,
His words trailed off as the Amerlin approached. Ingtar and the other men shifted in their saddles, preparing to dismount and kneel, but she motioned them to stay as they were. Liana stood at her shoulder, and Agumar a pace back. From his glum face, he appeared to have given up trying to convince her to remain longer. The Amerlin looked at them one by one before she spoke. Her gaze stayed on Rand no longer than on any other. Peace favor your sword, Lord Ingtar, she said finally. Glory to the builders, loyal Kisaran. You honor us, mother. May peace favor Tavaln. Ingtar bowed in his saddle, the other Shinarans did too.
all honor to Tarvalin,
Loyal said, bowing. Only Rand and his two friends on the other side of the party stayed upright. He wondered what she had said to them. Liana's frown took in all three of them, and Agumar's eyes widened, but the Amerlin took no notice. You ride to find the Horn of Valley, she said, and the hope of the world rides with you. The horn cannot be left in the wrong hands, especially in Dark Friend hands. Those who come to answer its call will come whoever blows it. They are bound to the horn, not to the light. There was a stir among the listening men. Everyone believed that those heroes called back from the grave would fight for the light. If they could fight for the shadow instead. The Amerlin went on, but Rand was no longer listening. The Watcher was back. The hair stood on the back of his neck. He peered up at the packed archers' balconies overlooking the courtyard, at the rows of people jammed along the guard walks atop the walls. Somewhere among them was the set of eyes that had followed him unseen. The gaze clung to him like dirty oil. It can't be a fade, not here. Then who? Or what? He twisted in his saddle, pulling right around, searching. The bay began to dance again. Suddenly, something flashed across in front of Rand's face. A man passing behind the Amerlin cried out and fell, a black-fletched arrow jutting from his side. The Amerlin stood calmly looking at a rent in her sleeve. Blood slowly stained the gray silk. A woman screamed, and abruptly the courtyard rang with cries and shouts. The people on the walls milled furiously, and every man in the courtyard had his sword out. Even Rand, he was surprised to realize. Agumar shook his blade at the sky.
Find him,
he roared.
Bring him to me.
His face went from red to white when he saw the blood on the Amerlin's sleeve. He fell to his knees, head bowed.
Forgive me, mother. I have failed your safety. I am ashamed.
Nonsense, Agumar, the Amerlin said. Liana, stop fussing over me and see to that man. I've cut myself worse than this more than once cleaning fish, and he needs help now. Agumar, stand up. Stand up, Lord of Faldara. You have not failed me, and you have no reason for shame. Last year in the White Tower, with my own guards at every gate and warders all around me, a man with a knife came within 5 steps of me. A white cloak, no doubt, though I've no proof. Please stand up, or I will be ashamed. As Agumar slowly rose, she fingered her sliced sleeve. A poor shot for a white-cloaked bowman, or even a dark friend. Her eyes flickered up to touch Rand's. If it was at me, he aimed. Her gaze was gone before he could read anything on her face, but he suddenly wanted to dismount and hide. It wasn't aimed at her, and she knows it. Liana straightened from where she had been kneeling. Someone had laid a cloak over the face of the man who had taken the arrow. He is dead, Mother. She sounded tired. He was dead when he struck the ground. Even if I had been at his side, you did what you could, Mother. Death cannot be healed. Agumar moved closer. Mother, if there are white cloak killers about our dark friends, you must allow me to send men with you. As far as the river, at least. I could not live if harm came to you in Shinar. Please return to the women's apartments. I will see them guarded with my life until you are ready to travel. Be at ease, she told him. This scratch will not delay me a moment. Yes, I will gladly accept your men as far as the river, if you insist. But I will not let this delay Lord Ingtar a moment either. Every heartbeat counts until the horn is found again. Your lead, Lord Agumar, to order your oathman. He bowed his head in assent. At that moment, he would have given her Faldara had she asked.
The Amelin turned back to Ingtar, and the men gathered behind him. She did not look at Rand again. He was surprised to see her smile suddenly. I wager Ilion does not give its great hunt of the horn so rousing a send-off, she said. But yours is the true great hunt. You are few, so you may travel quickly, yet enough to do what you must. I charge you, Lord Ingtar of House Shinoa. I charge all of you, find the horn of Valir, and let nothing bar your way. Ingtar whipped his sword from his back and kissed the blade. By my life and soul, by my house and honor, I swear it, mother. Then ride. Ingtar swung his horse toward the gate. Rand dug his heels into Red's flanks and galloped after the column, already disappearing through the gates. Unaware of what had occurred within, the Amerlin's pikemen and archers stood walling a path from the gates to the city proper, the flame of Tarvalin on their chests. Her drummers and trumpeters waited near the gates, ready to fall in when she left. Behind the rows of armored men, people packed the square in front of the keep. Some cheered Ingtar's banner, and others no doubt thought this was the start of the Amerlin seat's departure. A swelling roar followed Rand across the square. He caught up with Ingtar, where low-eaved houses and shops stood to either side, and more people thickly lined the stone-paved street. Some of them cheered too. Matt and Perrin had been riding at the head of the column with Ingtar and Loyal, but the two of them fell back when Rand joined them. How am I ever going to apologize if they won't stay near me long enough for me to say anything? Burn me, he doesn't look like he's dying. Changu and Nadao are gone, Ingtar said abruptly. He sounded cold and angry, but shaken too. We counted every head in the keep, alive or dead, last night and again this morning. They are the only ones not accounted for. Changu was on guard in the dungeon yesterday, Rand said slowly. And Nadao. They had the second watch. They always stayed together, even if they had to trade or do extra duty for it. They were not on guard when it happened, but they fought at Tarwin's Gap a month ago and saved Lord Ogomar when his horse went down with Trollocs all around him. Now this. Dark friends. He drew a deep breath. Everything is breaking apart. A man on horseback forced his way through the throng lining the street and joined in behind Ingtar. He was a townsman, by his clothes, lean, with a lined face and graying hair cut long. A bundle and water bottles were lashed behind his saddle, and a short-bladed sword and a notched sword breaker hung at his belt, along with a cudgel. Ingtar noticed Rand's glances. This is Hurin, our sniffer. There was no need to let the Aes Sedai know about him. Not that what he does is wrong, you understand. The king keeps a sniffer in Falmoran, and there's another in Angkor Dayil. It's just that Aes Sedai seldom like what they do not understand. And with him being a man, it's nothing to do with the power, of course. Ah, you tell him, Hurin. Yes, Lord Ingtar, the man said. He bowed low to Rand from his saddle. Honored to serve, my lord. Call me Rand. Rand stuck out his hand, and after a moment, Hurin grinned and took it. As you wish, my Lord Rand. Lord Ingtar and Lord Khajiit don't mind a man's ways, and Lord Ogomar, of course. But they say in the town you're an outland prince from the south, and some outland lords are strict for every man in his place. I'm not a lord. At least I'll get away from that now. Just Rand. Hurin blinked. As you wish, my Lord, Rand. I'm a sniffer, you see. Been one 4 years this Sunday. I never heard of such a thing before then, but I hear there's a few others like me. It started slow, catching bad smells where nobody else smelled anything, and it grew. Took a whole year before I realized what it was. I could smell violence, the killing and the hurting. Smell where it happened, smell the trail of those who did it. Every trail's different, so there's no chance of mixing them up. Lord Ingtar heard of it and took me in his service to serve the king's justice. You can smell violence, Rand said. He could not help looking at the man's nose. It was an ordinary nose, not large, not small. You mean you can really follow somebody who, say, killed another man by smell? I can that, my lord. Rand. It fades with time, but the worse the violence, the longer it lasts. I can smell a battlefield 10 years old, though the trails of the men who were there are gone. Up near the Blight, the trails of the Trollocs almost never fade. Not much to a Trolloc, but killing and hurting. A fight in a tavern, though, with maybe a broken arm, that smell's gone in hours. I can see where you wouldn't want Aes Sedai to find out. Ah, Lord Ingtar was right about the Aes Sedai, the light illuminum. Rand. There was one in Kyrian once, brown Nadja, and I swear I thought she was red before she let me go. She kept me a month trying to find out how I do it. She didn't like not knowing. She kept muttering, "Is it old come again or new?" and staring at me until you would have thought I was using the one power. Almost had me doubting myself. But I haven't gone mad, and I don't do anything. I just smell it. Rand could not help remembering Moraine. Old barriers weakened. There is something of dissolution and change about our time. Old things walk again and new things are born. You may live to see the end of an age. He shivered. So we'll track those who took the horn with your nose. Ingtar nodded. Uren grinned proudly and said, "We will that, Rand. I followed a murderer to Kyrian once, and another all the way to Moradon, to bring them back to the king's justice." His grin faded, and he looked troubled. This is the worst ever, though. Murder smells bad, and the trail of a murderer stinks with it. But this, his nose wrinkled. There were men in it last night. Dark friends must be, but you can't tell a dark friend by smell. What I'll follow is the Trollocs and the Halfmen, and something even worse. He trailed off, frowning and muttering to himself, but Rand could hear it. Something even worse, the light help me. They reached the city gates, and just beyond the walls, Huron lifted his face to the breeze. His nostrils flared, then he gave a snort of disgust. "That way, my lord Ingtar." He pointed south. Ingtar looked surprised. "Not toward the Blight?" "No, Lord Ingtar." "Ha!" Huron wiped his mouth on his sleeve. "I can almost taste them. South they went." "She was right then, the Amalan-Seat," Ingtar said slowly. "A great and wise woman who deserves better than me to serve her. Take the trail, Huron." Rand turned and peered back through the gates up the street to the keep. He hoped Egwene was all right. Nynaeve will look after her. Maybe it's better this way, like a clean cut, too quick to hurt till after it's done. He rode after Ingtar and the Grey Owl banner south. The wind was making up and cold against his back despite the sun. He thought he heard laughter in it, faint and mocking. The waxing moon lit the humid night-dark streets of Ilion, which still rang with celebration left over from daylight. In only a few more days, the great hunt of the Horn would be sent forth with pomp and ceremony that tradition claimed dated to the age of legends. The festivities for the hunters had blended into the Feast of Tevin, with its famed contests and prizes for gleemen. The greatest prize of all, as always, would go for the best telling of the great hunt of the Horn. Tonight the gleemen entertained in the palaces and mansions of the city, where the great and mighty disported themselves, and the hunters came from every nation to ride out and find, if not the Horn of Valir itself, at least immortality in song and story. They would have music and dancing, and fans and ices to dispel the year's first real heat. But carnival filled the streets, too, in the moon-bright, muggy night. Every day was a carnival until the hunt departed, and every night. People ran past veiled domen in masks and costumes bizarre and fanciful, many showing too much flesh. Shouting and singing they ran, a half dozen together, then scattered pairs giggling and clutching each other, then 20 in a raucous knot. Fireworks crackled in the sky, gold and silver bursts against the black. There were almost as many illuminators in the city as there were gleemen. Doman spared little thought for fireworks or for the hunt. He was on his way to meet men he thought might be trying to kill him. He crossed the Bridge of Flowers over one of the city's many canals into the perfumed quarter, the port district of Ilion. The canal smelled of too many chamber pots, with never a sign that there had ever been flowers near the bridge. The quarter smelled of hemp and pitch from the shipyards and docks, and sour harbor mud, all of it made fiercer by heated air that seemed nearly damp enough to drink.
Doman breathed heavily. Every time he returned from the North Country, he found himself surprised, for all he had been born there, at the early summer heat in Ilion. In one hand he carried a stout cudgel, the other hand rested on the hilt of the short sword he had often used in defending the decks of his river trader from brigands. No few footpads stalked these nights of revelry, for the pickings were rich and most were deep in wine. Yet he was a broad, muscular man. None of those out for a catch of gold thought him rich enough, in his plain-cut coat, to risk his size and his cudgel. The few who caught a clear glimpse of him, when he passed through light spilling from a window, edged back till he was well past. Dark hair that hung to his shoulders and a long beard that left his upper lip bare framed a round face, but that face had never been soft, and now it was set as grimly as if he meant to batter his way through a wall. He had men to meet. He was not happy about it. More revelers ran past singing off-key, wine mangling their words. The Hornevalier, my aged grandmother, Doman thought glumly. It'd be my ship I do want to hang on to, and my life fortune prick me. He pushed into an inn under a sign of a big white-striped badger dancing on its hind legs, with a man carrying a silver shovel. Easing the Badger, it was called, though not even Nita Sidoro, the innkeeper, knew what the name meant. There had always been an inn of the name in Ilion. The common room, with sawdust on the floor, and a musician softly strumming a 12-stringed bittern, one of the sea folks' sad songs, was well lighted and quiet. Nita allowed no commotion in her place, and her nephew, Billy, was big enough to carry a man out with either hand. Sailors, dock workers, and warehousemen came to the Badger for a drink and maybe a little talk, for a game of stones or darts. The room was half full now. Even men who liked quiet had been lured out by carnival. The talk was soft, but Doman caught mentions of the hunt and of the false dragon the Mirandians had taken, and of the one the Tyrants were chasing through Haddon Murk. There seemed to be some question whether it would be preferable to see the false dragon die or the Tyrants. Doman grimaced. False dragons. Fortune prick me. There be no place safe these days. But he had no real care for false dragons, any more than for the hunt. The stout proprietress, with her hair rolled at the back of her head, was wiping a mug, keeping a sharp eye on her establishment. She did not stop what she was doing, or even look at him, really. But her left eyelid drooped, and her eyes slanted toward three men at a table in the corner. They were quiet, even for the Badger, almost somber, and their bell-shaped velvet caps and dark coats, embroidered across the chest in bars of silver and scarlet and gold, stood out among the plain dress of the other patrons. Doman sighed and took a table in a corner by himself. Arianen this time. He took a mug of brown ale from a serving girl and drew a long swallow. When he lowered the mug, the three men in striped coats were standing beside his table. He made an unobtrusive gesture to let Nita know that he did not need Billy. Captain Doman. They were all three nondescript, but there was an air about the speaker that made Doman take him for their leader. They did not appear to be armed. Despite their fine clothes, they looked as if they did not need to be. There were hard eyes in those so very ordinary faces. Captain Bale Doman, of the Spray. Doman gave a short nod, and the three sat down without waiting for an invitation. The same man did the talking. The other two just watched, hardly blinking. Guards, Doman thought, for all their fine clothes. Who do he be to have a pair of guards to look over him? Captain Doman, we have a personage who must be brought from Mayenne to Ilion. Spray be a river craft, Doman cut him off. Her draft be shallow, and she has no keel for deep water. It was not exactly true, but close enough for landsmen. At least to be a change from Tyr. They'd be getting smarter. The man seemed unperturbed at the interruption. We had heard you were giving up the river trade. Maybe I do, and maybe no. I have not decided. He had, though. He would not go back upriver, back to the borderlands for all the silk shipped in Tyran bottoms. Soldae furs and ice peppers were not worth it, and it had nothing to do with the false dragon he had heard of there. But he wondered again how anyone knew. He had not spoken of it to anyone, yet the others had known too. You can come, easily enough.
Surely, Captain, you would be willing to sail along the shoreline for 1,000 gold marks. Despite himself, Doman goggled. It was 4 times the last offer, and that had been enough to make a man's jaw drop.
Who do you want me to fetch for that? The first of Mayan herself? Has Tyr finally forced her all the way out then?
You need no names, Captain.
The man set a large leather pouch on the table and a sealed parchment. The pouch clinked heavily as he pushed them across the table. The big red wax circle holding the folded parchment shut bore the many-rayed rising sun of Kyrie. 200 on account. For 1,000 marks, I think you need no names. Give that, seal unbroken, to the port captain of Mayen, and he will give you 300 more and your passenger. I will hand over the remainder when your passenger is delivered here, so long as you have made no effort to discover that personage's identity.
Doman drew a deep breath.
Fortune would be worth the voyage if there be never another penny beyond what be in that sack. And 1,000 was more money than he could clear in 3 years. He suspected that if he probed a little more, there would be other hints, just hints, that the voyage involved hidden dealings with Ilion's Council of 9 and the First of Mayen. The first city-state was a province of Tyr in all but name, and she would no doubt like Ilion's aid. And there were many in Ilion who said it was time for another war, that Tyr was taking more than a fair share of the trade on the Sea of Storms. A likely net to snare him, if he had not seen 3 like it in the past month. He reached to take the pouch, and the man who had done all the talking caught his wrist. Doman glared at him, but he looked back undisturbed. You must sail as soon as possible, Captain. At first light, Doman growled, and the man nodded and released his hold. At first light, then, Captain Doman. Remember, discretion keeps a man alive to spend his money. Doman watched the 3 of them leave, then stared sourly at the pouch and the parchment on the table in front of him. Someone wanted him to go east. Tyr or Mayen, it did not matter so long as he went east. He thought he knew who wanted it. And then again, I have no clue to them. Who could know who was a dark friend? But he knew that dark friends had been after him since before he left Marabon to come back downriver. Dark friends and Trollocs. Of that he was sure. The real question, the one he had not even a glimmer of an answer for, was why. "Hello, Bale," Nita asked. "You do look as if you had seen a Trolloc." She giggled, an improbable sound from a woman her size. Like most people who had never been to the borderlands, Nita did not believe in Trollocs. He had tried telling her the truth of it. She enjoyed his stories and thought they were all lies. She did not believe in snow either. "No trouble, Nita." He untied the pouch, took a coin out without looking, and tossed it to her. "Drinks for everyone till that do run out. Then I'll give you another." Nita looked at the coin in surprise. "The Tarvalan mark? Do you be trading with the witches now, Bale?" "No," he said hoarsely. "That I do not." She bit the coin, then quickly snugged it away behind her broad belt. "Well, it'd be gold for that. And I suspect the witches be not so bad as some make them out anyway. I no say so much to many men. I know a money changer who do handle such. You'll no have to give me another with as few as be here tonight. More ale for you, Bale." He nodded numbly, though his mug was still almost full, and she trundled off. She was a friend and would not speak of what she had seen. He sat staring at the leather pouch. Another mug was brought before he could make himself open it enough to look at the coins inside. He stirred them with a calloused finger. Gold marks glittered up at him in the lamplight, every one of them bearing the damning flame of Tarval. Hurriedly, he tied the bag. Dangerous coins. 1 or 2 might pass, but so many would say to most people exactly what Nita thought. There were children of the light in the city, and although there was no law in Ilion against dealing with Aes Sedai, he would never make it to a magistrate if the White Cloaks heard of this. These men had made sure he would not simply take the gold and stay in Ilion. While he was sitting there worrying, Yaron Maladon, his brooding stork-like second on spray, came into the Badger with his brows pulled down to his long nose and stood over the captain's table. Guard instead, Captain. Billman stared at him, frowning. 3 others of his men had already been killed, one each time he refused a commission that would take him east. The magistrates had done nothing. The streets were dangerous at night, they said, and sailors a rough and quarrelsome lot. Magistrates seldom troubled themselves with what happened in the perfume quarter, as long as no respectable citizens were injured. But this time I did accept them, he muttered. "'Tisn't all, Captain," Bjorn said. "They worked Karn with knives, like they wanted him to tell them something. And some more men tried to sneak aboard Spray not an hour gone. The dock watch ran them off. 3rd time in 10 days. And I never knew wharf rats to be so persistent. They like to let an alarm die down before they try again. And somebody tossed my room at the Silver Dolphin last night. Took some silver, so I'd think it was thieves, but they left that belt buckle of mine, the one set with garnets and moonstones, lying right out in plain sight. What's going on, Captain? The men are afraid, and I'm a little nervous myself." Doman reared to his feet. "Ask the crew, Yarin. Find them and tell them Spray sails as soon as there do be men enough aboard to handle her." Stuffing the parchment into his coat pocket, he snatched up the bag of gold and pushed his second out the door ahead of him. "Ask them, Yarin, or I'll leave any man who no makes it, standing on the quay as he is." Doman gave Yarn a shove to start him running, then stalked off toward the docks. Even footpads who heard the clinking of the pouch he carried steered clear of him, for he walked now like a man going to do murder. There were already crewmen scrambling aboard Spray when he arrived, and more running barefoot down the stone quay. They did not know what he feared was pursuing him, or even that anything did pursue him. But they knew he made good profits, and after the Ilion away, he gave shares to the crew. Spray was 80 feet long, with 2 masts and broad in beam, with room for deck cargo as well as in the holds. Despite what Doman had told the Kyrianen, if they had been Kyrianen, he thought she could stand the open water. The Sea of Storms was quieter in the summer. "She'll have to," he muttered, and strode below to his cabin. He tossed the sack of gold on his bed, built neatly against the hull like everything else in the stern cabin, dug out the parchment. Lighting a lantern, hanging its swivel from the overhead, he studied the sealed document, turning it as if he could read what was inside without opening it. A rap on the door made him frown. "Come." Bjorn stuck his head in. "They're all aboard but 3 I couldn't find, Captain. But I've spread the word through every tavern, hell, and crib in the quarter. They'll be aboard before it's light enough to start upriver. Spray do sail now. To sea." Doman cut off Yaren's protests about light and tides, and Spray not being built for the open sea. "Now. Spray can clear the bars at dead low tide. You've no forgotten how to sail by the stars, have you? Take her out, Yaren. Take her out now and come back to me when we be beyond the breakwater." His second hesitated. Doman never let a tricky bit of sailing pass without him on deck giving orders, and taking Spray out in the night would be all of that, shallow draft or no. Then nodded and vanished. In moments, the sounds of Yaren shouting orders and bare feet thumping on the decks overhead penetrated Doman's cabin. Even when the ship lurched, he sighed. Finally, he lifted the mantle of the lantern and stuck a knife into the flame. Smoke curled up as oil burned off the blade, but before the metal could turn red, he pushed charts out of the way and pressed the parchment flat on his desk, working the hot steel slowly under the sealing wax. The top fold lifted. It was a simple document, without preamble or salutation, and it made sweat break out on his forehead. "The bearer of this is a dark friend wanted in Kyrian for murders and other foul crimes, least among them theft from a person. We call upon you to seize this man and all things found in his keeping to the smallest. Our representative will come to carry away what he has stolen from us. That all he possesses, save what we claim, go to you as reward for taking him. Let the vile miscreant himself be hanged immediately, that his shadow-spawned villainy no longer taint the light. Sealed by our hand, Baldrian Suran, King of Kyrian, Defender of the Dragon Ball." In thin red wax below the signature were impressed the rising sun seal of Kyrian, and the 5 stars of House Rioton. Defender of the Dragon Wall, my aged grandmother, Doman croaked. Fine right the man do have to call himself that any longer. He examined the seals and signature minutely, holding the document close to the lamp, with his nose all but brushing the parchment. But he could find no flaw in the one, and for the other, he had no idea what Galdrian's hand looked like. If it was not the king himself who had signed it, he suspected that whoever had, it made a good imitation of Galdrian's scrawl. In any case, it made no real difference. In Tyr, the letter would be instantly damning in the hands of any Illianer. Man, with tyrant influence so strong. There was no war now. Men from either port came and went freely. But there was as little love for Illianers in Tyr as the other way round, especially with an excuse like this. For a moment, he thought of putting the parchment into the lantern's flame. It was a dangerous thing to have, in Tyr or Ilion or anywhere he could imagine. But finally, he tucked it carefully into a secret cubbyhole behind his desk, concealed by a panel only he knew how to open. My possessions, eh? He collected old things as much as he could living on shipboard. What he could not buy because it was too expensive or too large, he collected by seeing and remembering. All those remnants of times gone, those wonders scattered around the world that had first pulled him aboard a ship as boy. He had added 4 to his collection in Maradon this last trip, and it had been then that the Dark Friend pursuit began. And Trollocs too, for a time. He had heard that Whitebridge had been burned to the ground right after he sailed from there, and there had been rumors of Myrddraal as well as Trollocs. It was that, all of it together, that had first convinced him he was not imagining things, that had had him on guard when that first odd commission was offered, too much money for a simple voyage to Tyr, and a thin tale for a reason. Digging into his chest, he set out on the desk what he had bought in Maradon. A light stick, left from the Age of Legends, or so it was said. Certainly no one knew the making of them any longer. Expensive, that, and rarer than an honest magistrate. It looked like a plain glass rod, thicker than his thumb, and not quite as long as his forearm. But when held in the hand, it glowed as brightly as a lantern. Light sticks shattered like glass, too. He had nearly lost spray in the fire caused by the first he had owned. A small, age-dark ivory carving of a man holding a sword. The fellow who sold it claimed if you held it long enough, you started to feel warm. Doman never had, and neither had any of the crew he let hold it. But it was old, and that was enough for Doman. The skull of a cat as big as a lion, and so old it was turned to stone. But no lion had ever had fangs, almost tusks, a foot long. And a thick disc the size of a man's hand, half white and half black. A sinuous line separating the colors. The shopkeeper in Maradon had said it was from the Age of Legends, thinking he lied. But Doman had haggled only a little before paying, because he recognized what the shopkeeper did not. The ancient symbol of Aes Sedai from before the breaking of the world. Not a safe thing to have, precisely, but neither a thing to be passed up by a man with a fascination for the old. And it was Heartstone. The shopkeeper had never dared add that to what he thought were lies. No riverfront shopkeeper in Maradon could afford even one piece of Quendiar. The disc felt hard and smooth in his hand and not at all valuable except for its age, but he was afraid it was what his pursuers were after. Light sticks and ivory carvings and even bones turned to stone he had seen other times, other places. Yet even knowing what they wanted, if he did know, he still had no idea why, and he could no longer be sure who his pursuers were. Carvalan marks and an ancient Aes Sedai symbol. He scrubbed a hand across his lips. The taste of fear lay bitter on his tongue. A knock at the door. He set the disc down and pulled an unrolled chart over what lay on his desk. Come! Yaran entered. We're beyond the breakwater, Captain. Doman felt a flash of surprise, then anger with himself. He should never have gotten so engrossed that he failed to feel spray lifting on the swells. Make west, Yaran. See to it. A Buddha, Captain. No far enough. No by 500 leagues. We're put in long enough for me to get charts and top the water barrels. Then we do sail west. West, Captain? Tremalki, the sea folk are tight with any traders but their own. They are at ocean, Yaren. Plenty of trade between Taraban and Arad Doman, and hardly a Tarabaner or Domani bottom to worry about. They do not like the sea, I have heard. And all those small towns on Toman Head, everyone holding itself free of any nation at all. We can even pick up Saldanian furs and ice peppers brought down to Bandar Eban. Yaran shook his head slowly. He always looked at the dark side, but he was a good sailor. Furs and peppers will cost more than running upriver for them, Captain. And I hear there's some kind of war. If Taraban and Arad Doman are fighting, there may be no trade. I doubt we'll make much off the towns on Toman Head alone, even if they are safe. Palm is the largest, and it is not big. The Tarabaners and the Domani have always squabbled over Almost Blaine and Toman Head. Even if it has come to blows this time, a careful man can always find trade. West Yarn. When Yarn had gone topside, Doman quickly added the black and white disc to the cubbyhole and stowed the rest back in the bottom of his chest. Dark friends or Aes Sedai, I'll no run the way they want me. Fortune prick me, I'll know. Feeling safe for the first time in months, Doman went on deck as Spray heeled to catch the wind and put her bow west.
Hey, hi life, how you doing?
Chapter 10.
Hope you're doing
The
all
hunt
right.
begins. Ingtar set a fast pace for the beginning of a long journey, fast enough that Rand worried a little about the horses. The animals could keep up the trot for hours, but there was still most of the day ahead, and likely days more beyond that. The way Ingtar's face was set, though, Rand thought he might intend to catch those who had stolen the horn in the first day, in the first hour. Remembering his voice when he swore his oath to the Amerlin seat, Rand would not have been surprised. He kept his mouth shut, though. It was Lord Ingtar's command.
Oh, that
As
sucks.
friendly as he had been to Rand, he still would not appreciate a shepherd giving advice. Bjorn
Oh,
rode a
it's
pace
such a
behind
back pain.
Ingtar, but it was the sniffer who led them south, pointing the way for Ingtar.
And that's how I am pretty much
The
all the
land was
time.
rolling in
Is
forested hills, thick with fir
back
and leather
pain
leaf and oak,
constantly.
but the path here and set
That's why I smoke so
led
much
almost
weed.
straight
is
as an
to,
arrow, never wavering except to go around a few of the taller
to
hills,
dull the
where the
pain.
way was clearly quicker around than over. The gray owl banner rippled in the wind. Rand tried to ride with Matt and Perrin, but when Rand let his horse drop back to them, Matt nudged Perrin, and Perrin reluctantly galloped to the head of the column with Matt. Telling himself there was no point riding at the back by himself, Rand rode back to the front. They fell to the rear again, Matt again urging Perrin. Burn them. I only want to apologize. He felt alone. It did not help that he knew it was his own fault. Atop one hill, Uno dismounted to examine ground churned by hooves. He poked at some horse droppings and grunted. Bloody well moving fast, my lord. He had a voice that sounded as if he were shouting when he was just speaking. We've not made up an hour on them. Pardon me, we may have lost a flaming hour. They'll kill the bloody horses the way they're going. He fingered a hoofed track. No horse, that. Bloody tulloch. Some flaming goat feet over there. We will catch them, Ingtar said grimly. Our horses, my lord. There's no good to ride them into the bloody ground before we do catch up, my lord. Even if they do kill their horses, bloody trollocs can keep going longer than horses. We will catch them. Mount, Uno. Uno looked at
I'm
Rand
going
with
to
his
the
one eye
doctor
and
tomorrow.
shrugged and
Oh
climbed into
yeah,
the
hopefully they
saddle.
can help you out.
Ingtar took them down the far slope at a run, half sliding all the way to the bottom, and galloped up the next. Why did he look at me that way? Rand wondered. Uno was one of those who had never shown much friendliness toward him. It was not like Massima's open dislike. Uno was not friendly with anyone except a few veterans as grizzled as himself. Surely he doesn't believe that tale about me being a lord. Uno spent his time studying the country ahead, but when he caught Rand looking at him, gave back stare for stare and never said a word. It did not mean much. He would stare Ingtar in the eye too. That was Uno's way. The path chosen by the Dark Friends, and what else, Rand wondered. Huron kept muttering about something worse. Who had stolen the horn never came close to any village. Rand saw villages from one hilltop to another, with a mile or more of up and down country between, but there was never one close enough to make out the people in the streets, or close enough for those people to make out a party heading
Nice.
south. There were farms,
Yeah, the
too,
bus
with low-eave
passes are
houses
definitely
and tall barns and smoking
the way
chimneys,
to go
on hilltops and on
up there in
hillsides and in the
Albuquerque for
bottoms,
getting
but
around
never one
if
close enough
you
for the
don't have
farmer
a
to have seen
vehicle.
their quarry. Eventually, even Ingtar had to realize that the horses could not keep on as they were going. Rand heard muttered curses, and Ingtar pounded his thigh with a gauntleted fist, but finally he ordered everyone to dismount. They trotted, leading their horses uphill and down for a mile, then mounted and rode again. Then it was down again and trot. Trot a mile, then ride a mile. Trot, then ride. Rand was surprised to see Loyal grinning when they were down on the ground, toiling up a hill. The Ogier had been uneasy about riding in horses when they first met, preferring to trust to his own feet, but Rand thought he had long gotten over that.
Do you like to run, Rand?
Loyal laughed.
I do. I was the fastest in steadying Shanghai. I outran a horse once.
Rand only shook his head. He did not want to waste breath on talk. He looked for Matt and Perrin, but they were still at the back. Too many men between for Rand to make them out. He wondered how the Shinarans could
We
manage
don't
this
have a
in their
jack in the
armor.
box here.
Not a one of them slowed or voiced a complaint. Uno did not even look as if he
It'd
were
be
breaking
nice
a
if they
sweat,
did.
and the bannerman never looked the gray owl waver. It was a quick pace, but twilight began to close without any sight of those they hunted except their tracks. At last, reluctantly, Ingtar called a halt to make camp for the night in the forest. The Shinarans went about getting fires started and setting picket lines for the horses, with a smooth economy of effort born of long experience. Ingtar posted 6 guards in pairs for the first watch. Rand's first order of business was finding his bundle in the wicker panniers from the pack horses. It was not hard. There were few personal bundles among the supplies. But when he had it open, he let out a shout that brought every man in the camp erect with a sword in hand. Ingtar came running. What is it? Peace, did someone get through? I did not hear the guards. It's these coats, Rand growled, still staring at what he had unpacked. One coat was black, embroidered with silver thread, the other white, worked in gold. Both had herons on the collars, and both were at least as ornate as the scarlet coat he was wearing. The servants told me I had 2 good serviceable coats in here. Look at them. Ingtar sheathed his sword over his shoulder. The other men began to settle back down. Well, they are serviceable. I can't wear these. I can't go around dressed like this all the time. You can wear them. A coat's a coat. I understand Moraine Sedai herself saw to your packing. Maybe I, Sedai, do not exactly understand what a man wears in the field. Ingtar grinned. After we catch these Trollocs, perhaps we'll have a feast. You will be dressed for it at least, even if the rest of us are not. He strolled back before the cook fires were already burning. Rand had not moved since Ingtar mentioned Moraine. What is she doing? Whatever it is, I will not be used. He bundled everything together again and stuffed the bundle back into the pannier. I can always go naked, he thought bitterly. Shinarans took turns at the cooking when they were in the field, and Masima was stirring the kettle when Rand returned to the fires. The smell of a stew made from turnips, onions, and dried meat settled over the camp. Ingtar was served first and then Uno, but everyone else stood in line however they happened to come. Masima slopped a big ladle of stew on Rand's plate. Rand stepped back quickly to keep from getting the overflow on his coat, and made room for the next man while sucking a burned thumb. Masima stared at him with a fixed grin that never reached his eyes, until Uno stepped up and cuffed him. We didn't bloody bring enough for you to be spilling it on the flaming ground. The one-eyed man looked at Rand and left. Masima rubbed his ear, but his glare followed Rand. Rand went to join Ingtar and Loyal, sitting on the ground under a spreading oak. Ingtar had his helmet off, on the ground beside him, but otherwise he was fully armored. Matt and Perrin were already there, eating hungrily. Matt gave a broad sneer at Rand's coat, but Perrin barely looked up, golden eyes shining in the half-light from the fires before bending back to his plate. At least they didn't leave this time. He sat cross-legged on the other side of Ingtar from them. I wish I knew why Uno keeps looking at me. It's probably this bloody coat. Ingtar paused thoughtfully around a mouthful of stew. Finally he said, Uno no doubt wonders if you are worthy of a heron-marked blade. Matt snorted loudly, but Ingtar went on unperturbed. Do not let Uno upset you. He would treat Lord Agomar like a raw recruit if he could. Well, perhaps not Agomar, but anyone else. He has a tongue like a file, but he gives good advice. He should. He's been campaigning since before I was born. Listen to his advice, don't mind his tongue, and you will do all right with Uno. I thought he was like Masima. Rand shoveled stew into his mouth. It was too hot, but he gulped it down. They had not eaten since leaving Fuldara, and he had been too worried to eat that morning. His stomach rumbled, reminding him it was past time. He wondered if telling Masima he liked the food would help. Masima acts like he hates me, and I don't understand it. Masima served 3 years in the Eastern Marches, Ingtar said. At Ankar Dail, against the Aiel. He stirred his stew with his spoon, frowning. I ask no questions, mind. If Landai Shan and Moraine Sedai want to say you are from Andor, from the Two Rivers, then you are. But Masima can't get the look of the Aiel out of his head. And when he sees you, he shrugged. I ask no questions. Rand dropped his spoon in the plate with a sigh. Everybody thinks I'm somebody I'm not. I am from the Two Rivers, Ingtar. I grew Tabak with my father and tended his sheep. That is what I am. A farmer and shepherd from the Two Rivers. He's from the Two Rivers, Matt said scornfully. I grew up with him, though you'd never know it now. You put this Aiel nonsense in his head on top of what's already there, and the light knows what we'll have. An Aiel lord, maybe.
No,
Boyle said.
he has the book. You remember, Rand, I remarked on it once. Though I thought it was just because I didn't know you humans well enough then. Remember? Till shade is gone, till water is gone, into the shadow with teeth bared, screaming defiance with the last breath, to spit in Sightblinder's eye on the last day. You remember, Rand?
Rand stared at his plate. Wrap a shufla around your head, and you would be the image of an Aielman. That had been Gawain, brother to Elaine, the daughter heir of Andor. Everybody thinks I'm somebody I'm not. What was that? Matt asked. About spitting in the Dark One's eye. That's how long the Aiel say they'll fight, Ingtar said. And I don't doubt they will. Except for peddlers and gleemen, Aiel divide the world in two. Aiel and enemies. They changed the Prakarian 500 years ago. For some reason, no one but an Aiel could understand. But I do not think they will ever do so again.
I suppose not.
Boyle said.
But they do let the Tuathawan, the traveling people, cross the waste. And they don't see Ogier as enemies either, though I doubt any of us would want to go out into the waste. Aiel come to Steading Shanghai sometimes to trade for sun wood. A hard people, though.
Ingtar nodded. I wish I had been hard, half as hard. Is that a joke? Matt laughed. If I ran a mile wearing all the iron, I would fall down and sleep a week. You've done it mile after mile all day. Aiel are hard, Ingtar said. Man and woman hard. I fought them and I know. They will run 50 miles and fight a battle at the end of it. They are death walking with any weapon or none, except a sword. They will not touch a sword for some reason. Or ride a horse, not that they need to. If you have a sword and the Aielman has his bare hands, it is an even fight, if you're good. They herd cattle and goats where you and I would die of thirst before the day was done. They dig their villages into huge rock spires out in the waste. They've been there since the breaking, near enough. Arthur Hawkwing tried to dig them out and was bloodied, the only major defeats he ever suffered. By day, the air in the Aiel waste shivers with heat, and by night it freezes. And an Aiel will give you that blue-eyed stare and tell you there is no place on earth you would rather be. You won't be lying either. If they ever tried to come out, we would be hard-pressed to stop them. The Aiel lasted 3 years. That was only 4 out of 13 clans. Gray eyes from his mother doesn't make him Aiel, Matt said. Ingtar shrugged. As I said, I asked no questions. Finally settled down for the night with unwanted thoughts. Image of an Aielman. Moraine Sedai wants to say you're from the Two Rivers. Aiel ravaged all the way to Tarvalin. Born in the slopes of Dragonmount. The dragon reborn. I will not be used, he muttered, but sleep was a long time coming. Ingtar broke camp before the sun was up in the morning. They had breakfasted and were riding south while the clouds in the east were still red with sunrise to come, and dew still hung in the leaves. This time Ingtar put out scouts, and though the pace was hard, it was no longer horse killing. Rand thought maybe
All right, everyone. I'm gonna call into the stream for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night. I want to thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by. Excuse me. I appreciate all y'all support. Until next time, everyone. Y'all stay safe.